Portage County Board of Supervisors meeting, recorded March 21st, 2023.
Hurry up, take your time. Take your time.
It's 5 o'clock. We'll call the Portage County Board to order. Clerk will call the roll.
We have 22 attending in person, 2 online, 1 excused. Supervisor Maressi.
Pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Invocation by Supervisor Jankowski.
Heavenly Father, as members of the Portage County Board, we will be facing several issues in the near future. These issues will affect future generations. Past generations have set the current path or plan we are now following. We will be setting the plan for those to follow. Many options and considerations will be reviewed. Help us to listen, evaluate, and decide what is best for the whole county. Give us a clear and concise vision of which path we should take. Help us to listen and be respectful of the opinions of others and those that were hired to help us make these decisions. Be with us during the deliberations and protect those who protect us doing their normal duties as Portage County employees.
Members of the public who wish to address the county board on specific agenda items must register their requests at this time with such comments subject to reasonable control of the county board chair as set forth in Robert's Rules of Order. I see a lot of people have signed up tonight for the Justice Center. I noticed there was an article in the paper that said this was an open meeting to the public. Usually on agenda items, presentations, I do not allow the public to speak, but I was pointed out to me that I had done it last board meeting by Supervisor Dubeck. So for that reason, on this particular topic, I am going to continue to allow the public to speak to the topic of the new facilities, government facilities project, and make the exception this time. And with that, first one, and anybody who is speaking, you have 3 minutes. We will have the clock up here. Be respectful for others. Because we have so many other people to speak in a full agenda, if somebody else has already said the same thing that you wish to say, just say I show support or echo the sentiments of someone else. Don't have to repeat it. You can't pass your time on to somebody else. Somebody already asked me that if they could give their time to somebody else, and you can't do that as well. So the first one.
Tori Jennings.
Thank you, Supervisors, for allowing me to speak. This is regarding the Justice Center. Conceptual estimates, which is all you have right now for this project, are a necessary first step for any major construction project. Conceptual estimating is not cost estimating. Those are two totally different things. Conceptual estimates are arrived at in a number of ways, but comparisons are often used. So this begs the question, why is Wood County currently building a 225 to 300 max capacity jail for $635 a square foot for a total of $98 million, but Mr. Haga and Mr. Jankowski wish to build a 200-bed jail for $906 a square foot for a total of $165 to $175 million. This meeting gives the appearance of public participation, which is something I value a great deal. But the Justice Center process has been anything but transparent or objective. Following the last Space and Properties meeting, Chair Jankowski said to me, quote, "Downtown Stevens Point is dead." A blatantly false and subjective statement. He said this within earshot of one of the many downtown small business owners who have invested their lives and their finances in their businesses and in this community. It seems to me that by hook or by crook, Jankowski, Haga, and Executive Pavelski, a land developer, are determined to get their greenfield site, which will likely mean kicking the can down the road again. The core argument by which taxpayers will be asked to pay hundreds of millions of dollars appears to be convenience. Whose convenience are we talking about? It's certainly not the majority of people who use the Justice Center. It's not the 54% of Portage County employees who live within 4 miles of the downtown campus. It's not the numerous businesses that have incrementally built up over the decades to serve the Justice Center. It's not the circuit court judges who have all stated their preference for the downtown location. Matt Jankowski last stated to me at the Space and Properties meeting that the majority of his constituents want the greenfield site. And he added that it would be more convenient for them. There's not a single supervisor or city alder for that matter who knows what the most of their constituents want, because that would require a survey. And I don't think any of you have the resources available to you to conduct those surveys. I asked Mr. Jakowski if he knew how many times a year the people he actually has spoken with visit the Justice Center. He had no answer for that. There are so many things to say about what Chair Jankowski, Chair Haga, and Executive Pavelski have been up to the last 12 months. We know it involved not including the city in any discussions, not including HHS in any discussions, and we know it's tainted by a fundamental disregard for Stevens Point and the downtown. I just hope that you county supervisors and city alders who will make future decisions make up your own minds on this issue and look at the facts and the evidence that will require you to do your own research because it's not being presented to you. Thank you.
Liz McDonald.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to everyone this evening. I'm also here regarding the Justice Center. Most of you probably did see the 2 letters that were included in the information regarding today's meeting. There's one dated February 17th from Mayor Mike Wiesa, Ryan Kanowski, the Director of Community Development for Stevens Point, and Melissa Johnson, who is the Council President. In that letter, they indicate the city's desire to keep the Justice Center in the downtown area and provide information regarding the options whereby the county would have access to 14 acres in the downtown area. On the second letter, John Pavelski, the county executive, acknowledges the offers, but it appears to me also tries to take advantage of the city by asking if the county, and I quote, would incur any costs related to the transfer of the city's 27% share in the county city building to the county. The county also uses this letter to interfere with the city's decision on Business 51 by saying, on the second page of that letter, the county has a vested interest in Business 51 remaining 4 lanes in order to accomplish the goal of efficiency. We will need assurance of this from the city. We will need assurance of this from the city, Mr. Pavelski states in this letter. To me, this is an attempt to put the city of Stevens Point over a barrel and making a decision that has nothing to do with county business. And I think there's a whole discussion that can be had regarding the efficient use of the Business 51 corridor, but that's not for this particular meeting. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say, keep it downtown, vote what's best for the county and for the future. Thank you.
Mary Ann Leszewski.
At the last county board meeting, Ryan Kanowski stated that there is a way to fit a 1-story jail in the downtown location. Trusting his suggestion has been received, could it please be reviewed with the public? Mayor Wiesa's offer of almost 15 acres for a downtown site, which would eliminate the need of $43 million for a parking garage, also needs open discussion. Would his offer also enable space for a single-story jail downtown? At the green site, is the city's expense for roadway, utilities, and fire protection installation and ongoing maintenance factored into the projected costs of the green space site? For 154 years, the Justice Center has become embedded in the facilities and services of our central city. These lawyers, bankers, landlords, retailers, and restaurateurs have supported the clients, staff, and general public needing to use the Justice Center. After 154 years, do we just rip out a leg of their support and say, sorry, Stevens Point, you're on your own? At February's county board meeting, there were 11 public comments, including one from Judge Louis Malepsky, who strongly spoke in support of building the government facilities in the downtown area. There were others online that night who were not allowed to speak, who were also in support of the downtown site. Elected officials are expected to represent their constituents and can only share, and I can ask if anyone could please share any feedback that they are receiving from their constituents regarding a location choice. As far as squad car response in a timely manner to county needs, the downtown campus is only 1 block from Clark Street, a major 2-lane quick artery to highways 51, 10, and 66. Hundreds of people will be adversely impacted by the center if it is moved out of downtown. We have heard in the past about how parolees and offenders and sex offenders and in the hundreds need to report in daily in order to protect their probation. If a bus route is not available and they have to walk or bike, it's not practical in Wisconsin weather. And if a bus route was provided, a ticket for daily reporting could be very expensive. What I'm getting at is we could be morally responsible if parolees jeopardize their parole because they are late or they miss scheduled appointments with parole officers because of transportation problems. To force parolees to only use the green space is just like putting them in another prison with 4 walls around them. Thank you.
Mike Nicholson.
Mike, are you speaking? Mike, are you speaking on the Wolf? Yes. I'd like to stay on the Justice Center. I think we're going to stick with the Justice Center and we'll come back so we've got you folks together, okay? Thank you.
Guy Jansen.
You got your.
Hello, thanks for allowing me to speak today. My name is Guy Jansen. I live at 1708 Church Street, and I have a commercial building on First Street. Did I say, yeah, Church Street? And then we also have a rental house on Portage Street. It was mentioned the last meeting here that moving the Justice Center, prior companies like Sentry, AIG, Shopco, none of those had little or ill effect on local businesses down here, and that's an absolute false statement. I've been down here since 1993 with a restaurant we started, and so I've seen a lot of businesses come and go. We're fortunate enough to succeed and move on to other businesses in the area, and we've always called Stevens Point our home. It's concerning that we can't come together as a group of people and reason that the downtown, because I'm in favor of keeping it downtown, is going to be the best place for this Justice Center to be located. Maybe not at first when we've got all the issues of construction and putting things certain places and buying homes or property or whatnot. But when the Justice Centers are built either downtown or on the green space, look out 30 years from now, and I think that the decision keeping it downtown is going to be well worth that. Again, that's my personal opinion, but I just believe that the community, the majority of the people that use the Justice Center live in the community inside the city limits. I know last meeting there was mentioned no studies were available or they're too hard to get to determine who uses the Justice Center. I find a hard time believing if we're going to spend that kind of money that a survey like that can be found out. and figure out who actually uses this building, not only the employees, but the people who are using the court system or jails and stuff like that. So I just hope common sense prevails and Justice Center stays downtown. Thank you.
Bill Maher.
Hello, I'm Bill Maher. I'm a resident of 1100 Brawley Street. We call it the Dreams of Yesteryear Bed and Breakfast. And I'm in favor of a particular green space that might overcome some of the objections. That is the northwest corner of the airport. It's just a field there now. You can see the hangars way beyond it, but that land will never be used. This is not going to be an airport that draws in a lot of flights. They're even having trouble getting flights to go to Mosinee now. And that is just on the other side of I-39 from Stevens Point proper. And they put new utilities out to the Marshfield Clinic and Hospital. So those utilities are close by to minimize costs of building it there. There's room for expansion there. I'll be dead by then, but there's room for expansion there. And that's one of the things we considered. I was with Justice Works for 10 years. I was their treasurer. Prior to that, I joined that committee that meets about 3 times a year. One of the judges runs it. And I made trips to view how they do jails in other parts of the state. And I got very familiar with that. But, and I don't know, I haven't kept up with the populations that gets shipped out of town. It dropped quite a bit while Justice Works was running things in the mentoring program. I don't know what's happening now, but even if they're running out of room at the jail, programs like that should be continued because they certainly help. But I favor a green space, but not as a part of the Crossroads Commons. Thank you.
Bonnie Maher.
I hate to say it, but we're here again, and it seems like, you know, we live on the corner of Elk and Brawley, and we get to see all this that's happening. It amazes me that the last time I was talking about all this, you were going to remove 11 homes behind me, and I'd be having the jail in my backyard. Now, all of a sudden, you can find all this acreage right downtown, so I'm kind of wondering what your thinking was back then. But we bought our house, the Dreams of Yesteryear Bed and Breakfast on the corner of Elk and Brawley in 1987, and shortly after that, this jail and garage was built. Since then, every few years, we're doing this. And I can't help but think if we talk about green space or green field somewhere outside, this issue would have been solved. We'd have room for expansion. Every few years, we wouldn't be bringing this up again. The situation in our neighborhood has not changed. In fact, if anything, it's gotten even more eminent that the jail and Justice Center should not be expanded in the downtown area. For one thing, if you look at Elk Street, the charming homes in Strongs Avenue, even Water Street, the charming homes that have been renovated, young couples are moving into these places now. They have children. It's a whole new neighborhood than it was the last time we met and discussed the jail issue. More residential apartment complexes are being built. So you've got even more residences. You've got apartment complex directly north of the proposed area, and not to mention the ones in the old Jerns, Belkey area down there, Kmart area. So you've got more residential areas within the Stevens Point city proper. along with the young couples, of course, the young children, squad cars are still speeding down Elk Street and Brawley Street to get to wherever they need to go to get to a highway. With all those children, I see little tricycles on the curbs, and you look at all that and you think, why are these cars speeding like this through our neighborhood? It does not make sense. It's not safe. The idea of more street parking, to allow for employees, because you haven't really considered what so far that I can tell, parking for this structure. So the mayor said you'd allow more leniency in street parking. Well, I invite you to go past Brawley Street, Elk Street, and Strong's Avenue when the Justice Center is having their events and meetings. You can barely squeak a car through to get past that area. It is not a safe situation. The closing of Arlington Street and Elk Street is a bad idea. This would put a terrific burden on the people in the area that need to get to Water Street, Strong's Avenue, or Church Street. What are we supposed to do? Try to get on Water Street? I can see real problems coming up with this idea. Very concerned about the historic structures. Our house is on the National Historic Register. So is Century, so is Whiting Place, so is the synagogue. And here we have, we lament when historic
Bonnie,
structures are...
please wrap it up.
Okay. Well, finally, let me just say I think green space is the way to go.
Brian Formella.
Thank you, Chair Haga and County Supervisors. Thank you for your service. I'm Brian Formella, a county resident who practices law full-time at Anderson O'Brien at 1157 Main Street in Stevens Point. On behalf of my 36 other fellow attorney colleagues and employees of the Anderson O'Brien firm, while it is still relatively cold outside, we'd like to encourage the warm winds of dialogue that we sense, or that I sense may be occurring here over the last several weeks ago, that are circulating regarding a downtown courthouse location. We acknowledge an open presentation that County Executive Pavelski made last night at the Common Council yesterday evening, as well as what I consider to be effective and specific overtures that the city has been making over the last several weeks regarding the land parcel combining idea to allow for what I think I understand is about a 10.5 acre campus at the downtown location. So there may be more that we say in the meetings ahead, Mr. Chairman, but I guess for right now we encourage the warm winds that are blowing in that direction of communication for downtown. Thank you.
Keith Bisek.
Hi, Keith Bizak, 301 4th Avenue. Thanks for letting us speak. It seems like the right thing to do for an issue that has been called a crisis and an emergency, to only hear what as many people have to say about it as possible, and to not rush through anything, make any rash decisions, or barrel ahead with some idea just to break ground somewhere. There's a lot of things to consider. So again, I appreciate you giving the time to all the people that have a thought on this. My wife and I have a business downtown. We are part of the dead downtown, Mr. Jankowski, that is dead. We are dead downtown. We've currently been dead down there for 2 years, and are thriving in our deadness, along with all of the other brand new businesses that are down there, and all the old dead businesses that have been down there for several years. It's wonderful to be part of a thriving dead community. Part of our customer base is a bunch of dead people that work here. And that, maybe use this facility in numerous ways. Dozens of people, dozens of customers. Now, it's not the Justice Center's responsibility to keep our business functional and working. That's not the responsibility of this place. But when you consider trying to move a large old tree from where it's grown for several decades, and you just want to pick it up and move it somewhere else, it is definitely possible. They've done this. You can basically move any living thing from one place to another. But it's very sensitive to transplant an old tree. Have any of you ever done this or seen it? It's pretty impressive. Doesn't always work. A lot of times the tree ends up dying. And when you do move a tree, a large tree, you have to consider all of the roots and the wildlife, flora and fauna that are connected to that tree. This little kind of like microbiome that gets set up. A tree is not just a Walmart that can be kind of closed and reopened in some other facility. This center is a living, breathing part of a living, breathing community. So address the needs of this center specifically. Is it more space in certain things? Is it more parking? Is it a parking garage? Take the time to assess the specific needs. Also, please take the time to consider, if you were to transplant this tree of a justice center to somewhere else, how would it impact the surrounding community? Has any survey been done? Has any thought been put into who that would impact? How things might live or die, or if they're already dead, further decompose?
Please wrap it up.
I think you know what I'm in favor of, which is just a little more thought, a little more patience, a little more understanding and compassion for what this facility's function actually is. Thank you.
Fritz Menzel.
Hi, Fritz Menzel, 708 Frederick Street. Leaving the Greenfield site undetermined makes it impossible for both County East Siders and West Siders to assess the benefits and drawbacks towards the East Siders and West Siders. Doing this can be construed as a convenient asset for promoting a pro-Greenfield agenda. Is this what's happening on our board? If a Greenfield site is chosen, this has already been covered by the mayor, et cetera, who will foot the bill for the city's increased maintenance costs and other costs? If a Greenfield site is chosen, how will that impact heart of the city housing developments already in progress? Their value and their share of the future tax base. I would wonder too how many people that are on Verbo or whatever with bed and breakfasts in the area, which by the way, for the 100 and whatever years of the Justice Center being in here, we just heard that Elk Street and that neighborhood are being renovated. Everybody is very happy. There's young couples moving in. I'm assuming they're not doing that because they think the Justice Center is going to disappear. That's beside the point. Another thing that this really surprised me, I hadn't even noticed this in the notes, about having this thing hinge on the 4 or 3 lane 51. I know one of the things that I heard that really baffled me was when Sheriff Lucas said that when he goes out on Stanley Street, when they go out on Stanley Street on a call, they run into all kinds of problems. I want to see videotape of those problems. I cannot believe, I have driven that route so many times, I cannot believe that there are problems doing that. So to hinge this thing even partially on that, I think is, at the very least, highly questionable. Thank you.
Don Bentowski.
Don Bukowski, 1845 Edgewood Lane, Town of Hull. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. As a county, this will be the biggest project we will see in our lifetime. It is imperative as county board supervisors to recognize the importance of this project as a county-wide project impacting about 70,000 citizens. 45,000 of the county's population lives outside of the city of Stevens Point. Approximately 25,000 live in the city of Stevens Point, but I'd like to just mention that Stevens Point population dropped 1,000 people from the 2010 to the 2020 census. The greater part of this county lives east and south of Stevens Point. My point is the Greenfield site makes more financial and logistical sense for Portage County taxpayers. There are numerous advantages for a Greenfield site as follows. First story jail and LAC, more efficient staffing, less cost to the county taxpayer, central energy plant more economical, ample on-grade parking in one central area, parking closer to the building. We all know how critical it is in the winter to get as close to the Walmart front doors as we can, right? Construction, staging, unlimited. Build first, then move in. Big advantage. Faster construction time. Public safety, better access for the Sheriff's Department, I-39, Highway 66, Highway 10. Future expansion opportunities, very important, and less traffic congestion. Lastly, to further support my points on the Greenfield site, the City of Stevens Point Planning Department recognizes the only way to grow is east of Stevens Point. Within the last couple of years, they have purchased over 150 acres of property in the town of Hull, which I reside in. That has decreased our property value by a substantial amount of money. They've just purchased recently 25 acres off Goley Road and Brolowski Road, 50 acres on the town on Torn Road, and at last night's Common Council meeting, the city approved the purchase of 84 acres for $2.2 million off County Highway R and Old Highway 18. What's my point? The city is growing east. To me, it's crystal clear that the city of Stevens Point is moving eastward at a rapid pace. Therefore, it really makes sense to locate the new jail and the courthouse where the new future growth is going to take place. And I might add, it was noted here that we're rushing through this. Well, we've been looking at these projects for over 20 years now. We spent somewhere between $2 and $3 million as a county taxpayers on studies. There's a whole shelf of studies regarding this already. And finally, the city has noted that they will give us the ADRC building and the parking lot. Well, we as a county already maintain the ADRC building, and then once it's given to us, if we need it for additional parking, we're going to have to...
Don, please wrap it up.
Okay, we're going to have to demo the ADRC building and then build a new one. So thank you very much.
Trevor, Rurka?
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. One of the goals of the Justice Center, as stated by a county board member at the last county board meeting, is, and I quote, costs, pursuing the most feasible, responsible path. The total conceptual cost is also the largest argument I've heard at meetings and from board member statements, suggesting the downtown site is more expensive. However, this is a false argument due to flaws in the downtown proposal. Tegra stated that buildings have to be demolished. However, not all of them do. To suggest we have to demolish the county annex building right over there, which was only built in 1999, is fiscally irresponsible. This building can be held intact and possibly retrofitted with buildings to the north. Tegra stated that Arlington Street and the utilities underneath have to be vacated for the downtown proposal. But this is also false. Looking at the master plan presented, the landscape proposed for that Arlington Street corridor is just more concrete, new pavement, some trees, and a fleet garage driveway. None of these are required, and all of them can be easily adjusted so that Arlington Street remains. Ironically, parking was a concern brought up multiple times, and vacating Arlington Street would actually reduce parking by 25 to 30 spots. Even though there are no parking requirements for the central business district here in Point, this project downtown, Tegra fabricated parking based on parking requirements from other districts. There aren't too many consultants that would ignore the zoning code like this and not seek out clarification from the city. This mistake adds $43 million to the downtown budget arbitrarily. Because additional parking is not required and there's ample parking supply on the streets and nearby parking lots, according to the city, this is $43 million line item that can be removed from the downtown proposed budget. Tegra also stated that the synagogue must be relocated for the downtown location. This is false. When you remove the unnecessary parking garage from the proposal and utilize existing street and off-street parking, it's easy to reconfigure the overbuilt loading dock area pavement, green space, and fleet garage to build around the synagogue, leaving it intact. Lastly, regarding costs, how can these two proposals be compared right now? Besides the flaws I pointed out, we don't have an apples-to-apples budget comparison since the utility, land, and street construction costs are currently unknown for the Greenfield proposal. The proposals currently have mistakes and are misleading. We need more information, we need more answers, and we need more line items in the Greenfield budget. If we truly want to meet the project goals and pursue the most feasible, responsible path, the county needs to work more closely with the city to figure these things out and bring this back to the table for a much more accurate proposal. Thank you for your time.
Last one's Mr. Iden on the Justice Center, and then we will go to the WOOF. We have 4, 5, 6 people on the WOOF. Mr. Iden? Comment?
Thank you, Chairman Haga, and members of the board here for the ability to speak. The attorney who spoke here locally mentioned some warm winds. Could also be interpreted as hot air coming from the city, and another one mentioned something about not hearing constituents. I can point to the insistence of the city for a 2-lane road instead of the 4-lane road, which 3, I guess, anything opposing the 4-lane road is the city's choice. Not so much concerned about citizens, taxpayers, and constituents. Nevertheless, the little bit I've heard on this argument for the green space area, I want to say that I think I am in approval of that. If the city is dying and dead downtown, and it's been dead for a long time, if we go way back to the mall, I think we need to take a location outside of the city where we can break ground, get it right from the start. I truly believe that there will probably be cost savings incurred for that reason. I don't think you're going to be able to address parking if you're going to try and fit the Justice Works Center here in downtown. Wouldn't you rather have your city in the downtown area reflective of residency, as some of the locals here with their bed and breakfast and businesses have? The city needs to consider looking at more growth with private business, which would build a tax base for the downtown area, along with encourage more beautification of the city than cramming a Justice Works Center in the downtown area, even though that's what the city seems to be dead set on here also. So that being the case, I'd like to see it out of the community here, out of the city, and get it done right, incur the cost savings, and proceed ahead, because we waited long enough for this project to take place. At what cost of in human life and suffering do we not invest in the fact that we have an uptick in crime and we need an upgraded, modern facility to reach out to the future of Stevens Point in this regard? I don't believe the downtown area would be fitting for that. Let's see more businesses and more prosperity and residential growth in our downtown area and get this facility. I think the airport location would be a good location. It meets some of the criteria of traffic lanes and these types of things. That's my personal feeling, and I hope you take that into consideration as you move forward. Thank you.
Now into the Wolf resolution. Laura Groskopf.
Lori Groskopf, I'm a resident of Lincoln County, but I've been working on wolf control since 1995 and very intensively since 2009. I've spent well over 10,000 hours working on this project and others related to giving counties the opportunity to comment on what the county wants for wolf management. If you saw the maps I had displayed on the way in, and it's in your packet, Portage County will move from an unsuitable classification as wolf habitat to what we call Unit 4, which is secondary wolf habitat. About half or more of the county will become that in the new management plan. I made you guys a bunch of handouts, but I guess I can't use them. But just to let you know a little bit about wolves, the federal delisting level for wolves is 80. The current number at the minimum population during the year is 972, with a range of 812 to 1193. Currently, they're having their pups, and so that population doubles at this time of year. We have a number of confirmed and probable wolf conflicts, 14 of them in Portage County. Maybe some of you who live in the city never heard of these, but they're all documented by the DNR as probable or confirmed. I wanted you to compare the population chart. 350, which is the current level in our plan from 1995 to 2007, was passed in 2004. And if you compare the population, and this is all on the DNR website, to the conflict chart, which was too small for you guys probably to mostly read anyway. When I look at 2004, that's the first year that over $100,000 in payments was made statewide to farmers who have lost animals, people who have lost pets, and hunting dogs. So it's an issue that has been near and dear to my heart. When I moved into Lincoln County in 1995, wolves were already present, and they've been present the whole time. And I live 10 miles out of Rhinelander, 10 miles out of Tomahawk. So it's reduced our property values, it's reduced recreational opportunities in our county, both for hunters and for people cross-country skiing, hiking with your dog, having your kids outside. There's just a lot of reasons why Portage County probably would like to think twice about having more presence of wolves than what you've had. The experts at the national level and international level all believe the same thing. Wolves do not do well around people. They do not do well where agriculture is present, and they like having lots of deer, which I guess you guys have. So that's 2 reasons not to have wolves out of the 3 parameters for good wolf habitat. Thank you so much.
Mike Burst.
Good evening. My name is Mike Brust. I've, like Lori, had a lot of experience with wolves, but I was in the Conservation Congress for 32 years. In fact, I was chairman of the first Conservation Congress Wolf Committee back in the 1980s. I've been on every DNR Wolf Committee for the last 35 years and helped develop both the first and second wolf management plans, the second of which is still in effect. I've also spent almost 3 years on the current plan before the DNR took it over and excluded the public in writing the plan. Yes, I know a lot about wolves, but not nearly as much as perhaps the foremost expert on wolves in Wisconsin, who you just heard from. I'm also a director and former president of the Wisconsin Bull Hunters Association, We have 4,500 members across the state, including over 200 right here in Portage County. Our membership has voted unanimously at 2 different annual meetings to support a statewide gray wolf population of 350 wolves or less. Our members are not opposed to wolves in Wisconsin, but believe they must be managed in numbers and locations that aren't widely destructive to other wildlife populations and human inhabitants. According to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the statewide wolf population of 350 wolves far exceeds the population necessary to maintain a sustainable population in the state, which the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service requires under the Endangered Species Act. As you are probably aware, a substantial wolf population in the Mead Wildlife Area has created serious hardships on neighboring farms and livestock producers in Portage County. Wolves are a majestic, iconic animal that deserves to be regulated in numbers and areas that serve their own best interest, as well as the best interest of the citizens of Wisconsin, including the citizens of Portage County. Considering all this, I would ask that you support your committee's resolution to manage wolves in reasonable numbers here in Wisconsin. Thank you very much.
Jeffrey Giese.
Jeff Giese, Portage County resident for 62 years.
Jeff, can you get closer to the mic, please, for the people at home? Thank you.
Jeff Giese, Portage County resident for 62 years. Thank you for letting me speak. Wisconsin Guide for over 40 years. Conservation Congress for 10 years. I serve on the Conservation Congress Wolf Committee. Depredation that has happened in Portage County. John Hilgard lost 13 heifers. Rex Weller lost 9 calves on the Buena Vista. Sighting of wolves, quarter-mile south of Lake Packawa, 2019, of April of 2019. Depredation recent, 2 dogs on Martin Drive, 2021. My feelings on the zones is to keep the zones the way they are and not expand that zone 6, zone 4 counting part of Portage County. Remind you, Portage County, the new proposal that the DNR is considering is covering everything west of I-39 all the way down to 73. These are the areas that I've talked about depredation. That's it. Thank you.
Mike Nicholson.
I want to echo the comments that Lori Grosskopf said. I'm also on the Conservation Congress. I live in the town of Buena Vista. We got wolves right in our backyard. I saw them last year turkey hunting. And all we're asking is the DNR started out this proposal at 350 or less. That's all I'm asking you county to do is make them at 350 or less. We're not asking for much, just what the DNR said would be sufficient for this state of Wisconsin. Thank you.
And the last one is Jerry Nuth.
Board members, thank you for letting me speak. My name is Jerry Knuth. I live in Plover, Wisconsin. I'm a past president of the Wisconsin Wildlife Federation and an active member of the Federation since 1988. I'm currently chair of the Forest Parks and Recreation Committee, and I sit in on the Wildlife Committee as well. We've been wrestling with this wolf issue for 30 years now, maybe longer. We're very proud of the fact that the wolf population has been restored, and it's time to manage a situation as best we can. The Federation has had a seat on the Wisconsin Wolf Management Stakeholders committee since the mid-1990s. And every April or May, we would get together at a meeting in Wausau. More recently, the Federation's Wildlife Committee has relied on 6 or 8 members of the committee, of the Wildlife Committee, to keep an eye on the wolf management program. These subcommittee folks have put in a lot of time and effort in coming forward with their best objectives. Back in November, we received a copy of the wolf management plan, the drafted plan, and immediately surfaced a letter of 32 specific objections to the proposed plan. There's been a good amount of back and forth with the DNR since those objections were raised, and they were filed with the Natural Resources Board. We're here to talk about potential wolf populations in Portage County. It should be noted that Portage County has long been classified as unsuitable wolf habitat. There are charts to support that. Lori has done a lot of work on that as well. This concern equates to less management west of Highway 51, 39, and as the secondary wolf management zone. The concern equates, we would prefer to see Portage County remain as labeled as unsuitable wolf habitat. The resolutions also state that the DNR should not move problem wolves into Portage County. We should remember that we have a minimum count of 350 wolves in the state, and lastly, the Wildlife Federation will continue to operate in good faith in dealing with the Department of Natural Resources. Again, I thank you on behalf of the Federation, and I would like to see Portage County remain stable when it comes to the wolf situation.
I came a little late here. You guys had started meeting and I didn't see any place where I could sign up.
Which item did you want to speak on? The wolf? The wolf?
Yeah.
State your name, please.
Al Lobner.
3 minutes, go ahead. Are there others that want to speak on the wolf too, or?
Yes.
Yes, on the wolf?
Yes. Okay. Good evening. My name's Al Lobner. I'm on the Wisconsin Conservation Congress for District 6. I'm a district leadership counselor along with Mike Nicholson there. This has been a real problem for a lot of people, maybe not so much in the city here, but as many of you may or may not know, there was a wolf run over here on I-39 just in December. They're starting to inhabit pretty much everything. Out where I live by the Mead Wildlife, the only place you'll see a deer is around the house. I know there's a lot of concern. You'll hear people that'll say that these wolves, we need to have more because they won't know what to do, and all of a sudden there will be none. Well, that's not the truth. Dr. Misch, who is considered the expert, along with Lori, on wolves, has said compensatory reproduction is the one way that they will be able to survive. The way they won't be able to survive is when the numbers get too high and people start to kill them. And we won't do that by hunting them. You just won't get them all, or trapping them, you just won't. But they'll start to poison them, and that's no good for anybody. We are at that point because, as some of you may or may not know, there's been a lot of dogs that have been poisoned because of people that are just sick of wolves. And that doesn't do the wolf any good either. So I guess I would hope that you would vote for this 350, if for no other reason that if you go through the statistics over the years, you will see when we hit the 250 to 350 mark, the damages and the claims went up exponentially higher. That is the point where they become a problem to us and themselves as well. Thank you.
State your name, please.
Scott McAuley.
And Miss, did you want to speak as well? You're going to be the last one then, okay? And what item? Justice Center. Very good. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name's Scott McAuley. I'm on the board of directors for the Trappers Association, also the Conservation Congress Wolf Committee, and several other committees. Learn to say no someday. But the Conservation Congress, our Wolf Committee we opposed the plan, basically for three reasons. The goal of 350 is the voted position of the Congress and affirmed by 69 counties in the 22 spring hearings. We believe that the people living in wolf habitat or the wolf range need to be the people that are listened to. If you live in Milwaukee, Madison, you can talk all you want about wolves, but we think the people living in wolf range should have a little more say. And the extreme expansion of, say, Zone 4 and some of the other zones into non-suitable habitat was the other killer of that, of the plan, of what we thought. The Trappers Association, they supported what the Wildlife Federation, the 32 points that they thought. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, your name, please.
Andrea Olson.
Andrea Olson.
Hi, I gotta get closer. So I had a question for everybody because we're spending a lot of money talking about the Health and Humans, or the Healthcare Center and also the Justice Center, when these two places actually have a ton of overlapping things that happen with them. You're adding beds for adolescents in the jail. You're taking care of adolescents and preventative stuff over down the street. Why aren't we talking about trying to combine these two huge projects? We do have enough land down here because you have the county has 20 acres right down the street that then if a land swap or something happened with the city, that 20 acres can get back on the tax base. When you're short getting employees too for staffing for mental health, nurses or anything, or when you need to take somebody back and forth, if you have those services or that person that can be shared between the jail or what's going on in the health center, it can help out a lot. Also, if you're combining services such as food or meeting rooms, we have the adults and the adult disability, or not, the adult center right over here too, Aging and Disability Center. Well, if in the healthcare center down the street, they're talking about adding meeting rooms and community rooms and all these other things, well, we also already have them right here. Why don't we start talking about doing multi-generational care? There's grants out there for that too. So suddenly you have the elderly people with the kids in the, working with the Ruth Guilfrey Center. If you have a male or female that is going to court and those kids have to go to court, suddenly they're having a bad time or something, you already have some rooms set up that those kids can go and play with toys in. Like, if you look at what Ruth Guilfrey started out way back when, and when this was named after her, her first office was actually in the courthouse. So she took care, it didn't matter who you were, jail, not jail. If she saw diapers out on a clothesline, she'd stop over and try and help to give them care. Like, we need to look at the total person, their entire family, and the entire community. We have the most people downtown that probably access those services, people that are coming in from out of town to out of the other cities. I'm guessing that if they looked at the population of individuals that actually have to use the court system, that's what should be looked at, not saying, oh, let's move this out to the edge of town, and suddenly, where are those people actually coming from to get there? And unless we improve our transportation system, which is probably not going to happen, we leave those people with nothing. Everything should just come downtown, keep it central, and lot off over there so that we can add some value to our tax base.
All right. Correspondence.
The 2022 Portage County Library highlights, upcoming county board and committee meeting dates, and information related to the Government Facilities Master Plan project, and video recordings of county board and committee meetings.
So one of the things I want to talk about is the Committee of the Whole that's coming up on the 10th, and we have touched on this a little bit, but we have a lot of people here from the public, as well as our staff and companies that are helping us through this process. One of the ways I'm looking at doing it is that when we have public input at the Committee of the Whole, we may have one person respond to a comment so that we can, and that would probably be the end of it. We're not going to have a lot of back and forth, but if a statement is made or a question is asked, we may have someone respond or answer to it at that time, and then we would go to the next question or the next item or the next person. So just thinking of a different way of doing it so that we have answers and information in the moment. So, and as you can see, we've got a full agenda of meetings. So presentations. I want to thank those folks that are here for the presentations tonight. Number 5, Teresa Kovach, Child Protective Services, initiating initial assessment supervisor, recognition of Governor Evers' Caring for Child's Award. And Kim, if you want to come up to the front, please.
All right. Leticia.
I've asked Kim on this one, and we have some other ones coming forward as well. Later on, these people that we have that are employees and staff, it is important that I want to make sure that we recognize them. We have some wonderful staff, and I think it's great that they can come down here and be recognized. So take it away, Kim.
So good afternoon. My name is Kim Vaquero. For those of you who don't remember, I'm the Director of Health and Human Services. Tonight I have the pleasure of introducing you to Teresa Kovach. Teresa supervises the social workers who do the investigation of child abuse and neglect, our foster care coordinator, and our abuse and neglect referral line at Human Services. She has worked in Portage County as a child protective social worker for 30 years, 14 of those years as a supervisor. On March 7th, Teresa received Governor Evers' prestigious Caring for Kids Award. The Caring for Kids Award honors professionals for their dedication to serving their communities, their exceptional leadership, and their proven record of ensuring the well-being of children and families. So the first time I met Teresa was about 10 years ago. I could see on-screen reports of abuse and neglect piling up on the computer. We normally average about 4 reports a day. On that day, there were 10. 2 of them were red, meaning that the worker who took the report felt that they were emergencies. There was also a page on the overhead page system in the office asking for Teresa to go to the lobby because there was a lady who needed to speak with her. So I walked down to Teresa's office to see if I could help. There was a worker sitting outside her office writing a petition, and I asked the worker if she would be more comfortable doing it in her, at her desk. And she said the petition, and I quote, was due in an hour and 32 minutes. And she couldn't do it until she talked to Teresa. I asked if I could help her, and she said, nope, it'd take me too long to explain it to you. Then she asked if I was going to skip the line. I opened Teresa's door as I apologized to the worker, and there was another angry worker pacing in Teresa's tiny little office. There was a worker sitting in a chair with her head in her hands, and both workers were firing questions and information at Teresa about two different families. Teresa's work cell and desk cell were both ringing, and I could see more reports popping up on the screen behind her. Oh, and there was this brand new intern cowering in the corner. So I said to Teresa, can I help you with anything? And she looked at me and she said, you don't think I can do this? Now, I did the work for many years, and I like a good adrenaline rush, but let me tell you, nobody could do that, except apparently Teresa. Over the next 25 minutes, she calmly took and analyzed an enormous amount of information. She coached, she encouraged, and she safety planned. She sent the two workers out on the emergencies. She answered questions about the petition, and she scheduled a time to meet the lady out in the lobby. She monitored both the phones, because her cell phone was ringing and the desk phone were ringing. It was just an amazing display of talent and grace under fire. In all the subsequent years since that first meeting, Teresa never lost her sense of humor, her passion for the work, or her compassion for the families that we serve. I have never heard Teresa raise her voice or say an unkind word about anyone. Finally, I admire that Teresa has an unwavering moral compass, and I'm proud that we do the right thing for the right reason. Despite her heavy workload, our current very successful in-home safety service is her brainchild. In my career, I've had the honor of working with many talented professionals. I would put Teresa at the top of this list. I hope you will join me in congratulating Teresa as receiving the Caring for Kids Award.
Well, thank you very much, and I really appreciate you taking time out of obviously a very busy agenda this evening to acknowledge the award. I got to go to the Capitol building on March 7th to receive the award, and we were in this beautiful conference room in the Capitol building, and that was really special. But I have to tell you that this is more special to me tonight, and the reason is because this is where I have practiced my craft for the last 30 years. And I've been lucky to do it here, but I've also been very intentional about that. And that has been because of the support of my supervisors, my managers, my director, and the county as a whole in supporting child welfare practice here in the county. There's nothing more important than the safety and well-being of our children and families. And that has been really the driving force behind my service to the county for the last 30 years. So thank you very much.
I wasn't sure if Teresa would be able to come here and speak in front of the group, but you proved me wrong. You did a very good job. I just wanted to say, I used to say it before about Ray, and now I say it about Kim, that every day they wrestle with a tornado over there at Health and Human Services. And we're very fortunate to have staff like that. And for you folks to hear some of the instances and some of the things that they deal with maybe on a day-to-day basis, we don't hear that. And I think it's important that we do and realize that all of these things that are going on in our community. So thank you again. Congratulations. So. Number 6, Scott Cole and John Leake, Point Area Single Track Association Standing Rocks Mountain Bike Trail System presentation. And if some of you haven't had the opportunity to get out to Standing Rocks to see some of the wonderful facilities we have out there, thanks to these folks, please do so once the weather gets nice.
Hi, I'm Scott Cole. This is John Leake. John is a local business owner. I manage a local business. John's been involved with the Boys and Girls Club for many years, and I've been on the Green Circle Board for 21 years now. We want to talk a little bit about what Point Area Single Track Association is, which we call for short is PASTA. PASTA started in about 2002 at Standing Rocks County Park. We worked with the Parks Department back then to start mountain bike trails. And over the years, we went through volunteers, the trails got harder to maintain, and in 2018, John Leake, myself, and Mike Mitchell met at the hilltop and decided we needed to do something to bring the trails up to what the future trails in our area are becoming right now. We were losing ridership, having trouble getting locals to go out there because it wasn't as fun. So we brainstormed and we went in front of the Portage County Parks Board, and it took 3 months to get an approval, but we finally did. And the success has been from 2018 to 2020, we had a 600% increase in trail fee passes. We went from $4,000 in one year. Starting in 2018, we're at $4,000 for trail passes. We increased it to almost $25,000 during COVID, and we thought that was just because of COVID, but for the past 2 years, we've hit that mark consistently. And one of the things about the trails out there, we try to make this fun. We want to get people and kids out there. We want the community to be healthy. We want a place where local businesses and other people can go and play and have fun. Employee recruitment in our area is important, and employee retention is important in our area. Being that I manage a local business, it is hard to find good help right now. And if we can have places for people to recreate, like at Standing Rocks County Park, that's very, very important. One of the things that you may be wondering, if you haven't been out to Standing Rocks, what are mountain bike trails? What is single track? At first, single track looked like a deer trail going through woods. And very narrow, very tight, very rocky. You had to be pretty skilled not to clip a tree and fall or flip or get hurt. I always joke that we support the orthopedic centers in Stevens Point pretty well. And last night I was trying to get Dr. Williams to sponsor us, but it didn't work out. So what we did in 2019 was we totally revamped the trail system. We started to raise money. We brought in trail builders. We built what we call modern flow trails. And flow trails look kind of like a bobsled run or a luge run, a lot smoother. There's berms that can be 3 feet tall or a little taller that you ride on. There can be obstacles, jumps, tabletops that you can roll over, downhill runs, and that's what attracts people. One of the things that's been a big push for us is the kids in our community. We have the Spash mountain bike team that practices out there every Tuesday and Thursday night from July to the end of October. In May and June, I run the Youth Mountain Bike Club every Tuesday night, and we have another 45 plus kids from age 7 to 17. And we've been really working hard to get kids unplugged in our community. That's the biggest thing right now, is to get kids outside, keep them healthy, and to keep also their parents healthy. And we've noticed a lot of parents have been getting into mountain biking or even biking on the Green Circle because of what we've been doing. They've been out there active with their kids. One thing about our pasta group, just to give you some more background information, we are a fund at the Community Foundation. We've had a fund for 3 years now. All the money that we put into Standing Rocks has been raised from donations. We put in about $30,000 a year in donations for the trails so we can attract people to go out there and play and ride. The parking lot's been fuller than it's ever been out there. We used to go out to Standing Rocks and there'd be nobody in the parking lot. Now you go out there on a weekend and they're parking in the overflow section on the grass, which is pretty darn amazing. And it's big enough with almost 500 acres that you never run into a traffic jam like you would in Chicago. So it's pretty nice. John, would you like to say anything?
No, keep going.
One of the things, and I don't think we'll go for the full 10 minutes because it's been a long night here already. One of the things we came up with when we first started this was if we build it, they will come. And that's turned out to be true. We just did a survey, and in the first day, we had almost 150 responses to it from what we put out on the internet. 40% of the users at Standing Rocks come from within 20 miles of the park. Another 30% are up to 50 miles away, and 24% can be 50 to 100 miles away. We're bringing a lot of people into town. We call it the I-39 corridor right now with Standing Rocks, and then what's happening up in Wausau with Rib Mountain. Rib Mountain or Granite Peak just passed in their commission that they're going to build mountain bike trails at the ski hill, which is going to bring a lot of tourism through this area. And I think as we try to progress and keep Standing Rocks up to date, that's going to help us in the community too. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to start holding events out at Standing Rocks too to help raise money to help us maintain the trails. One of the biggest struggles we have is maintaining the trails, and that's a yearly thing. A lot of people think you just build trails and they're done. It's kind of like keeping your yard up here in the city. If you just mow it once in the summer, it's out of control. At Standing Rocks, we have to trim, we have to work on erosion issues, drainage issues. It's just not lazing a dirt trail down it. We try to keep the trails safe, and we try to keep them fun. One of the biggest things, and John says this often, is when you're out there and you have the young kids out there riding and you hear them go down towards Bear Lake, through the berms, the corners, over the man-made jumps, you hear them yahooing all the time. And it's great when you get back to the parking lot with these kids and they're high-fiving, they want to ride until it's dark. And that's been a big thing for us out there. But otherwise, I think that's all that I've got. We're going to continue working on the trails. Last year we became incorporated. We have a 10-member board. We aren't as organized as your board here, but we're getting there. And we have a pretty diverse board also, so we're trying to plan for the future when John and I are too old and we can't shovel dirt and rake and do things like that out there. But I want to thank the County Parks Department for their help with doing this, because without them, these trails never would have happened. They've been a great partner in letting us build these trails, and they continue to help us when we need them. Thank you.
Supervisor Gifford.
Yeah, real quick, just in the 2 terms that I was on Parks Commission, what constantly impressed me was the amount of public participation, especially in Standing Rock's building and activity, the Friends of Standing Rock,
right.
Pasta Group, all you folks, you're really putting Portage County like on the map for recreational users. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, one of the things, and I appreciate that, Bob, I forgot I had some quotes from our survey I just wanted to read. One of them, I feel the trails are well maintained and engineered very well. I think you're doing a great job. Love that you continue to polish the trails. I think the trail is well maintained and believe the group and the county does an excellent job. Great job. I recommend this trail to anyone who wants to mountain bike. The improvement over the past few years have been amazing. Great work. And I just wanted to pass those on so people would know what we're doing out there. We just aren't playing with Tonka toys out in the woods.
Supervisor Peterson.
Of the riders, what percentage comes from outside the Portage County area?
It's been growing because I've been involved with events at Iola and mountain bike racing all over the state. I'm seeing a lot of people from the Valley, from Green Bay, from Madison, and we're getting people from the UP coming down here too, which usually it's the opposite way around. And you know, I didn't bring everything in for my survey that I had, but I would say up to 100 miles, that's 24% of the people that, you know, we got to answer the survey. It could be right around 25 to 30% is possibly from out of the area.
So it's also bringing people in for the motels and restaurants also.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Thank you.
So every chance I get to talk to Director Rose, I always do. It's always fascinating. But he tells me that this group always speaks very highly of you, and how the continues to grow, and the involvement that you folks put into it, and how all these events are so well attended. So, and you continue to make that park the jewel that it is. So I want to thank you for that as well. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe one quick thing to add is, this is a growing.
Use the mic, please, so the people in the. There you go.
I was going to say, this is a growing sport, and important that we grow with it as a community. A specific example would be, I think many of us are aware that football is on the decline. Soccer's actually on the decline. Many of our traditional sports are on the decline, whereas this sport is on the increase, like lacrosse. Mountain biking is the second fastest growing sport in the nation to lacrosse. And, kind of cool that we're on top of this for our community, and, keeping our community a fun place to live and grow. Just wanted to share that little part.
And just to add to that, the high school program at SPASH, the league's called NICA. That was started by Don Edberg, who's originally from the Point area. He's out in Custer now. But it's grown to almost 2,000 high school students. So it's a high school sport now, which is huge. And it's good to see the kids outside, and there's other sports that they can do.
Thank you. Number 7, Mike Van Cleo and Nate Pearson, Tegra.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Where's your other half?
She's at home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm here tonight. Nate's online. He wasn't able to join us in person, but so we're here obviously to continue our discussion about the Justice Center. Going to follow a somewhat similar format to what we've done in the past. We provided updated information in a packet that everyone should have received today. Just something to note, we left all of the questions on the cover sheets so that everybody could see what we've received from supervisors, and then also I'll say quasi-community members via supervisors. And we've highlighted the ones kind of a beige color, peach color, if you will, that we've already discussed in previous meetings. So we're not going to discuss those again tonight. That's at least not our intention at this point. We could obviously revisit if deemed necessary. The idea is that the items that are in white are the ones that we're going to be walking through tonight. So I guess one other change from what we did in the past is we are going to invite people that maybe had direct input into some of these answers to come down and say something, instead of just everybody having to listen to me try to go through that. So with that, we're going to get started here. The first question or request that was brought up was to look at the population studies that are currently available, and Tim is going to take us through these.
You want me?
One more page.
Can't see him anyway. Yeah. People at home can though.
Yep, they have the handouts in their book. So I was
So
just,
while that's coming up, I'll just go ahead and get started here. You have in your handouts the Portage County Geographic Center and the Center of Population. That Geographic Center is depicted by the purple diamond, and then in that inset you have the corresponding years in the population there, and how the population is progressing to the southeast of the county. It's also depicted there in the downtown area is the current campus, as well as there were questions as to the city police department, and so we've located that there for you on that particular map. The next map shows, again, the geographic center and the center of population. That is with, we have the gray dots, if you will, on your map that are indicating people in the county, and so you can see the clusters of that as it relates to the geographic center and the population center. The next map, if you could bring that up, is the Portage County population change, the 1990 to 2022. This is going to show the increase and the decrease by municipality. So in white is what you're going to see is terms of those municipalities that are increasing in population, and then in the gray or the shaded is going to be those that have the corresponding decreases. The next item is the chart that shows that same data, but it's in the table, so you can see by municipality how those municipalities are changing and the exact population that we currently have for them. Okay.
Can we ask questions?
Supervisor Medine, do you have a question?
I think you're
Use the mic, please.
You might be missing one page in that the highest concentration of correction center users live in the central city area, including hundreds of regulated offenders who make hundreds of appearances. It would have been nice to have that or something similar to that, rather than a nice, pretty picture of the county.
Supervisor Matt Jakowski.
Is that data available? Do we know that that's a true statement?
It is based, I think that was addressed to me. It is based on the registered sex offenders, that there are 70 sex offenders, and that's a snapshot, because that varies on a daily basis.
So you're speaking to the sex offenders location as far as?
Yeah, and 25% are in an area that's roughly 5% of the county. So that's a fact. And of course, we have offenders that are day report, and they're about the same proportion, although that no one's been able to refute that, but I can't get that information from anyone. And then we've got 400 people on probation and parole, and talking with the probation and parole people, they're at about the same proportionality.
Supervisor Matt Jakowski.
Last time I checked, probation and parole was on Highway 10, behind Target. Thank you. The other thing, not all sex offenders have to use court services. Is that correct? Is there someone in here that can answer that?
We made a statement with the location, and
There was a statement made that the people that use the court, the majority of do we have that data? Can we get that data? Otherwise, it's just a statement, and I need to know if that's true or not.
I think that the stuff that Mr. Medine is talking about as far as the sex offenders is readily available online. The other information I think is hard to gather, because I had asked Andrea myself about that particular fact about the people that are in our system now and going through it. And she said that's very hard to track. And I can try and get her to come to one of the meetings, maybe the committee of the whole, to respond as well. Supervisor Soik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to that sex offender, how many of them are placed to live in this area, and how many have actually grown up and have grown up and lived in that area? Because, I mean, this really muddies the waters when you're looking at people that are placed in a certain area versus somebody that has grown up and lives in that area.
I think we've had, we can look into it to see what we can accomplish, but other than that, it's we've got items that we need to cover and we want to talk about, and if we have questions or comments, that's good, but I'm not going to resolve all of the issues tonight. So we're making notes, and we'll see what we can come up with or what else we can do to answer these questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Continuing on with that, just wanted to wrap up the item number 5. There's a comment early on regarding availability of Tegra to meet with supervisors and interactions. So the request has been out there. 12 supervisors have responded to our invitation to meet. 6 we met with in person. 2 said that they were comfortable with the information they currently had. 2 more requested that we leave the invitation open in case they would like to meet in the future based on information provided at one of these meetings. And then 2 supervisors were directly involved with the Facilities Management Committee, and so they felt as though they had the information in front of them. Beyond that, just to clarify, we had met with Judge Baker specifically. We also had shorter conversations with Judge Zell and Judge Malepsky. We've met with Sheriff Lucas and also District Attorney Cousins and the City of Stevens Point twice. All right, item number 9 was related to the relocation of the Stevens Point Police Department, and we just had a follow-up from last time, which was discussion and questions about the relocation of Point Police Department from this area to outside of downtown. So Tim mentioned already that we did put that dot on the map, if you will, so people could reference it geographically. Items 12 and 13 center around development opportunities for this space downtown if the county were to vote for a greenfield site. So we have had some conversations with developers. We're having ongoing conversations with developers. We've started to put together some preliminary ideas, but they are not at the point that we're going to present them tonight to the board, but they will be presented to you as part of the meeting of the whole. Item number 14, perfect, good to go. So there's been a lot of conversations about public transit and what this could look like. So there's a map in your packet that we were able to get from, sorry, I'm going to want to make sure, Central Transit, showing what the current routes are. And then the page behind that was a conversation that we were able to have with Scott Anderson. Part of the committee was able to have with Scott Anderson. He is with the City of Stevens Point Central Transportation, and we wanted to check with them regarding the process to add a bus stop. The comment was that requesting the addition of a bus stop is relatively easy. The first step is to just submit via email to the Central Transportation. They have a panel of 5 individuals that reviews the request, and they'll make a determination. Now, they said that decisions can come very quickly as that 5-panel group meets on a weekly basis, and if there are no specific questions, it can actually be voted on immediately. As everyone would expect, the scale of the requester is an important part of the determination. Large organizations or multiple organizations partnering together adds validity to that request to add the stop. So again, there's a process out there, and if anyone has additional questions, obviously, we'd be more than happy to go through them. Okay, so I think we can just stop on this. The intent here for item number 16 is not, our intention is not to discuss each of these slides individually. There was a request for information about daily usage of the downtown area by county employees. And so the executive office put together a survey and asked pertinent questions to understand how the county staff utilize the downtown. And the results of that survey are what has been included in your packet. No. All right. So if we could skip ahead a few pages then. So items 17 and 18 are again another very important topic related to the economic impact of what happens if the county were to vote to move out of the downtown area. We've again, we're in discussions with professionals that study this area. We're gathering preliminary results, and we will have something formal to present at the meeting of the whole. But at this point, that is still a work in progress for those items related to the economic impact.
Mr. Chair, just a quick
Mr.
question.
Weaver.
What kind of professionals have you engaged?
So, can you help? Thank you.
Thanks, Supervisor Weaver. So far, we've talked to Dennis Lawrence with the North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. He's done a computer survey that he can kind of give his details on. Talked to Randy Pfeifrick with the Wausau Economic Development over in Wausau. Talked to several developers in the area. Tim Schertz is going to be looking at doing a presentation to the committee. Also looked at, Findorf has done some work that they'll be doing some presentations. And that's the team so far. And we're looking at other information to gather, but that's the team so far.
Have you considered involving the city in these discussions?
Again, we've had comments. I've asked for comments back from them. I'm waiting for those comments. I'm waiting for that correspondence.
No, I mean with respect to this group that you just referenced.
I have not, no.
Thank you.
Okay, we go ahead. So the next item on the list was trying to determine if the Stevens Point City Council shared the same view on annexations as related to the mayor. And so county executive put together the letter that is included in this packet right now. And within this letter, it really goes beyond just annexation, but it's trying to outline what we've identified as very important items that would be required from the city to make the downtown site most usable and most feasible to the Portage County. I'm not aware of a response to this letter yet, but we are obviously in hopes that we'll receive something from the city so that we can address the property needs around the area, along with understanding the cost implications, because there's been a lot of questions related to the costs and the studies that have been put into place, and I don't want to get down a rabbit hole here, but I can say that for the Greenfield site, we do have costs in there for property acquisition and development of utilities and infrastructure and things like that. For the downtown site, based on preliminary comments that were made from the city, we have not included money for purchasing of city property around here or purchasing of the roads or things like that that the city has implied in conversations would be on the table. So if the city were to come back and say that those are in fact going to cost the county money, we would need to adjust that cost study.
Supervisor Splinter.
Yeah, I'll let you know in regards to that letter and Mr. Pavelski's presentation at the Common Council last night. I tuned in on it because I wanted to listen as to what questions were going to come out of the Common Council. And after he gave his presentation, I can't recall any questions from the Common Council or the mayor of the county exec who was right there. Which is, I don't understand it. On one hand, they say we're not including them. On the other hand, we give them a presentation and they don't, I thought he would get peppered with questions right and left, but it's just amazing. I don't know what the dynamics is on the Common Council, but they were mute last night from what I could see. Thank you.
I want to also remind everybody that the mayor of Stevens Point sits on our Space and Properties Committee and is a voting member.
Okay. The next item, kind of following in line again with the city and the county relationship, is confirming Stevens Point commitment to the county if we remain downtown related to parking, acquisition of needed. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I read that one already. Vacating Arlington, utility relocation, etc. So if we could roll forward, what's included in here now, sorry, I'll stand here, is the letter that the city of Stevens Point sent to the county. And if we could get to the last page with the map, because a lot of what they were saying in here is fair information, and it's also questions that we're asking. But it's the map, thank you, that we wanted to discuss a little bit more. Because the acreage downtown is of a concern, and the footprint that we have available is going to drive a vertical structure. So I'm just unfortunately going to have to step away. So that's not going to show up on the TV. Okay. So the big difference between what the city of Stevens Point proposed in this letter versus what the master plan was showing for the downtown really comes down to the ADRC. We did consider that as property that would it make sense to pull that into the master plan? And would that allow things like, lower jails, more spread out? Would it take out some of the issues? What we determined in a relatively quick nature is that to take that property over and make it usable for the downtown campus, we would have to then demo and rebuild that facility on another location, which would require most likely property acquisition or at a minimum construction costs. And so as we ran those numbers at the conceptual level, it didn't make sense to incorporate that approximately 25% of what's in red into our overall calculation of property available. So I just wanted to clarify that that was considered. Due to costs, it was determined that that wasn't the right way to go.
And I want to, I've heard a number of different acreages, and when I look at this, it's broken up. They talk about the parking lot that's across from the county city building that we already own, but that is a block, 2 blocks away. Talks about the county city building. Well, I don't know how I can use that in new construction. It's all, the whole map is all broken up except for the area, and again with the ADRC, the jail, and we need to take down 1039 in order to clear the slate.
So the next question that was out there was really related to operational issues, and so we've actually asked the sheriff and Todd, the director of facilities, to just make a comments from their perspective, because they're the guys that will be living in these facilities.
From the standpoint of the concept of the green and also the downtown location, the concept as is would not increase staff with the concept design of the 200-bed facility with the sheriff's office and things downtown or in the green. Where we come into play is if it builds up, then we would be increasing staff. And talking with the Department of Corrections, they will not evaluate my staff needs until we get further along after the concept. Then they will actually look at the design and look at my staffing, which I'm saying is adequate, to get approval from the Department of Corrections.
So in terms of staffing for additional square footage, we're going to need more people. Plain and simple, more area to clean, more custodians needed, more area to maintain, more maintenance workers needed. Until we know exactly where that building's going to be, I can't tell you exactly how many more people we're going to need, but there definitely would be more of a need. What we are looking for, and one thing that we can hopefully offset some of those staffing needs with, is a new modern building that's code compliant, that meets HVAC standards, and that's ADA compliant, and allows us to go into the future with a building that meets the needs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So item 25 was related to the synagogue. There was a more detailed discussion that was had, but just on the 15th of March, Chris Schultz, purchasing director, the county executive met with John Harry, who I believe is the head of the historical committee. There you go. Thank you. I was close. And so they went through and kind of followed up on the comments and the conversations that we had earlier this summer to understand what their concerns were. Their concerns remained similar to what we discussed in the summer, which was the need for ADA bathrooms, the need for storage, and the need for the synagogue, if it is relocated, to meet certain requirements, faith-based requirements. All of those are accounted for and assumed within our current budget, and really seems like a feasible option. So if downtown is voted to be the site, relocation of the synagogue, although it has some questions to be answered, it is a feasible option and part of the plan. More questions were...
Supervisor Machikowski.
With the relocation of the synagogue, was that going to be relocated to currently owned county property? Or would that have to be another figure that we'd have to add for property to be purchased to relocate the synagogue?
So the assumption that's currently included is that it could be location TBD, but the assumption right now was that it could be relocated onto city-owned property on the other side of Water Street, and it seemed to meet the needs from the faith requirements and from the historical society requirements. But that has not been a hard, fast determination.
So that may have to be a purchase.
So
There's a
Property.
risk.
Mike, there's a line item for a cost associated with the synagogue in the downtown because it would, of the structure being moved.
But does it include property purchase? Because he said earlier the downtown included no property purchase.
I don't know, did I hear a number of, a rough number?
There's not a specific budget included for property purchase. There is a budget with contingencies included for, I'll say, lifting up, protecting, relocating, construction of an ADA compliant bathrooms, along with some storage that is currently in the basement of that facility. But if there's a risk that if there had to be a large property purchase made in conjunction, we would need to revisit that.
I look at the footprint of it now, it's not much more than an acre, I don't think, so it's not too big of a, but we have some money in there, and depending on, it would be small in the size of this project though, but.
Okay. So there was more discussion about, what would it mean to move the county seat? And so again, the executive office did some additional research and identified a large number of requirements. And the punchline is the earliest that it could really start is the next national election, so next fall. And it would be a very lengthy and complicated process. And if anyone wants to see the exact details of the steps, we do have it available, but that's the summary version of the research that was done by that office. Similar to that, we did research, the executive office did some research related to annexation of adjacent property adjacent to the city of Stevens Point and what the options are there. Again, we have all the steps outlined if anybody wants to read it in detail. Basically, there's three options that can be utilized to annex property into the city. At the end of the day, for it to be the most successful for everyone involved, it would require the city being on board with the annexation. That would be the way to put that properly. So that is an important component when considering the annexation piece. If we had been able to get definitive timelines on relocating the county seat, or I'll say a drawn-out annexation process, our intent was to update the construction schedules that were in the first packet that was passed out. Because though the process is drawn out and there's such a high number of thises and that's and paths that it could go down, we're not able to update the schedule at this time, but just know that both would add significant length to the project that we're currently looking at. All right, there was a question asked about what did we assume in the schedule related to a standard annexation and zoning process. And so for downtown, we assumed that the synagogue and the city property negotiations would begin in March of 2023 and then be completed by June of 2023. Zoning questions and concerns would need to be agreed to in principle by June of 2023, and then we would want negotiations with the city complete by August of 2023. So basically, August of 2023, we would need to feel very comfortable with the zoning process and anything that needed to be done with the city for a downtown site. For the Greenfield, it was assumed that the property search would begin in earnest in March of 2023, and that a location would be identified with enough certainty by June of 2023 to allow the next phase of design to commence. So basically, there was a 2-month window assumed in the Greenfield schedule to allow identification and preliminary negotiations enough to feel comfortable that we would be able to move forward with the site. Zoning questions and concerns would need to be agreed to in principle by August of 2023, and final approvals related to zoning by the city or any negotiations with the city would need to be complete by October of 2023. So that's the timeline that we included right now to basically get through city approval process and property acquisition for either option. Okay, so what we're looking at now is what is the next, well, I think I'm going to start off a little bit with what is the next phase, right? So assuming that it's voted to move forward and assuming that a site is selected, what would happen next is that we would move into schematic design. So just to remind everybody, right now we're at the concept level. We've developed boxes that are the right size to house the functions that need to happen within them, and we've made sure that the boxes can fit on the sites that we have. But the design team is really going to, at the schematic design level, move into that next detailed step. That's when we can get more detailed cost estimating. That's when we can get more detailed adjacencies, all of those types of things. So what would happen after the approval is voted on and given is we would move into schematic design. It's about a 5-month process, regardless of which site you choose. And the county would be looking at a little over $2 million, somewhere 2.3 or 2.5 based on your location selected to get through schematic design. After that, we would move into design development where the documents would get defined further. It's about 6 months downtown, 7 months on a greenfield. You can see the approximate associated costs. And then finally, the construction documents would be completed at the end. The construction documents are the final documents that would go in for permit and that would actually be bid and pricing would be finalized and determined on. All right. So 31.1, and I am not going to read all of this. These were questions that we received several questions related to costing, assumptions, and things like that. And so we wanted to try to identify, I guess, we wanted to answer the summarized question as we read through everything that people had submitted. So one of the first questions we got was questions about what's included in that budget, either the $165 million or the $175 million. Within that number, it's made up of two main components, the cost of work or the construction cost, the hard costs. And it's made up of the soft costs, which are things like land acquisition, development costs, permitting, things like that. When you take the cost of the work, the construction, and you add together the soft costs, that will give you the total project costs, the all-in costs. That's what we've been presenting and discussing with the board, is that all-in cost, what you can expect to see. Within that all-in cost, there are contingencies. We have a design contingency, an estimating contingency, a construction contingency, and an owner's contingency. The percentages are consistent between the two different projects. So the design contingency is 5% of the cost of the construction, right? It's meant for, as the design develops through those next phases and items are further defined, that design contingency fills the gap because right now that budget is based on a lot of assumptions and no hard drawings. The estimating contingency similarly is based 7.5% on the cost of construction, on the cost of work. It's very similar in the usage to the design contingency, but it's based, it's used to fill in the gaps or to cover the gaps when, again, as the drawings get developed, and we always knew that that wall was going to be there, but we assumed the wall was going to be drywall, so it's estimated at something, and when it comes back, it needs to be drywall with bullet-resistant rating behind it or some component that wasn't clear in that original estimate. So the unit cost included wasn't correct. So that estimating contingency is used to fix that along the way without increasing that overall budget. The design contingency and the estimating contingency will both work towards zero. And as we get to the point when we would put a shovel in the ground or when we would define what that final cost is going to be, you can expect those to be zero unless we have a specific identified use, which would then be daylighted and people would know that it's there. The construction contingency, 2.5%, that's also based on the construction cost itself. That is an amount of money that will actually get carried into the construction project. That's for what we sometimes say the known unknowns. We're going to be asking Findorf to put together a guaranteed maximum price for this project, And that guaranteed maximum price, in that, they're going to be responsible for filling in the gaps in the drawings, making sure that they have everything covered that maybe isn't 100% detailed out yet. They use the information that they have in their history. They use their knowledge of the construction process, but at the end of the day, there are gaps that need to be filled, and that's what that construction contingency would be used for. It's not meant for owner improvements. It's meant to fill some of the gaps on the project. Honestly, 2.5%, which was recommended by the construction manager we hired, is a very fair contingency price. It means that they're very confident in their estimating abilities, and it also assumes that we're going to set a guaranteed maximum price for the project close to the end of when the drawings would be fully designed. There's something to, there's always conversations and decisions that can be had. The last contingency that we have is the owner's contingency. That's 5%, and the difference here is that that's based on the total project budget. That's based on the all-in number. That contingency, the owner's contingency, is not within the construction manager's contract. It's held on a budget outside of it, and it's used for things that no one could have known about or reasonably assumed. So one of the biggest risks with any construction project is, as they would say, coming up out of the ground. No one knows what's buried below the ground, and we'll do our best to do soil borings and find things out like that. But that's a risk of every construction project. So if there was something down there that we didn't know about, this owner's contingency would be used to cover those. As we get through those risk milestones, then this owner contingency can be used to, owner requests, some enhancements, things that maybe we value engineered out of the project early because we wanted to, be fiscally responsible. And as we get through the project and realize that, things are going really well, maybe we're able to add some of those back in. So that's what the contingency would be used for. All right, let's go to the next one. So we had some additional costs about cost of waiting. Jenny and I spent a fair amount of time on the cost of waiting and also the next piece that we're going to go to, making sure that she was in agreement with the numbers that we were presenting, and also trying to present this at the right level so that people could get useful information out of this without just hearing numbers. So what we wanted to start with is that the cost of waiting that we calculated was based on a declining assumption of escalation. We assumed 6%, 5%, 4% over the next year 1, year 2, year 3, dropping down to 3%. We worked our way back down towards 3% because 3% has been an average in the construction industry that's been used with relative success for quite a long time. We started at 6% because everyone knows what happened during the COVID times. And so we're trying to work our way back down to a reasonable escalation level. So based on that 6% escalation factor that was assumed, you can see the math that shows if the downtown phase was $175 million, 6% on that is $10.5 million, which would put 2024 at $185 million. If you divide that $10.5 million difference by the 12 months, that gives you the $875 per month cost of waiting. Similar math on the greenfield to the right. So, in round numbers, it's an $850,000 cost in escalation each month that we delay making a decision. All right, we'll go to the next one. So this piece here, there's been a lot of questions about total costs. There's been numbers that have been discussed. So first, we assume the same escalation factors. We did run this calculation out 27 years instead of 25, just bringing that up so that nobody thinks that that was a mistake, that was intentional, and I'll explain why. On this first page, what we're looking at is if these projects were built today, okay? That's the simplest way to look at it. Your all-in greenfield project built today is about $256 million. And always remember this is a sliding scale, but we're not going to talk ranges or that will get extremely convoluted tonight. So your all-in project for your greenfield, $256 million. Your all-in project downtown, $299 million. So in today's dollars, we're looking at a $43 million difference in cost of construction with a 0-year time difference in when your campus would be completed. Now, one of the items that the difference, well, one of the items that we were hoping to have, we were working with Portage County's financial advisor, and unfortunately, they weren't quite done with the calculations, but they guaranteed we would have these numbers for the meeting of the whole, is what is the difference in the financing costs or the interest payments, right, between these two on that $43 million over the duration that the bonds would be issued. So we will work hard to have that information for you at the meeting of the whole. Now, if you look at the next page, and this is where I think things got a little bit confusing, so I want to, please ask questions or let's take time to understand this. Based on the debt level that Portage County is comfortable holding, as determined by the finance department and other conversations with other counties, we looked at when could we feasibly build the next phases of the project. And then we also, in order to know those years, we had to escalate the 2023 cost of a component to the year that it's going to be built. We use that same escalation factor, the 654, and then 3% going out, so we've been very consistent in that. And so as we look at, you could say the total cost of the greenfield, if we do it in a phased approach, is $290 million. And the total cost of a downtown approach, if we do it in a phased approach, is $395 million. Which on the surface, if you do the math, you said, holy cow, that's $105 million difference. But, and this is the but, if you adjust the $105 million back to today's dollars, right? Get it into today's dollars, so that, like, what's it gonna feel like? It's still $44 to $45 million difference. So what we're telling you is that the difference between the sites, although the number grows in difference, that's due to the time value of money. Ultimately, what the county will feel is going to feel the same. It's a $44 million difference between the two sites. The bigger question, or maybe the more important piece to consider with this, is not the difference in the cost in the phased approach, but the difference in the time until the campus would be completed. So you would be 8 years longer to finish the downtown project, and then what we will have for you at the meeting of the whole is what is that difference in financing cost, right? Because the construction cost is only the first thing. We all know that. The sticker price on the car is only the first thing that we look at. Ultimately, what is those payments going to cost us? So that's the piece that I wanted to discuss here, because when I hear the parking garage being $43 million, yes, in 2042. But if you really want to talk about the parking garage and its true value in today's dollars, we need to talk about a downtown parking garage in terms of $26 million. Still expensive, don't want to diminish that, but it's, to be speaking in the right terms, it's a $26 million parking ramp. If I did that with no questions, then yeah.
Supervisor Weaver, then Supervisor Splinter.
The materials that we've just gone through with respect to, I think it's item 31.1, they weren't actually part of the agenda packet. So this is the first time that, as a supervisor, I'm seeing the information, and I appreciate you going through it. It's helpful. Will they be made available to the public? Because obviously the public hasn't seen it either, so.
This full packet that you guys received on your desks when you came in has been shared with the county clerk's office.
Okay, so it'll be posted then for the public?
Yep.
Great.
Supervisor Splinter.
So either way, you look at today's dollars or future or whatever, we're looking at a differential of $43 million. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. I did just a little calculation at home. What $50 million was, so I'll back it down to 43 a little bit. But if you put a pallet in front of us, 40 boxes on that pallet, plumb full of $100 bills, that's about $50 million. So take a couple boxes off of it and you got your $43 million. That's a lot of money. A lot of money on our taxpayers. Well, we could build 2 healthcare centers for that savings. So please remember this before you vote one way or another. Look out for the taxpayers. That's your number one reason why you're sitting in your seat right now. You represent 2,800 people. And make sure that you think ahead for the next 25 years when we're no longer here, or well, I won't be here, but we got to think ahead and do the right thing by the taxpayer, no matter what the sentiments are of either downtown or Greenfield. But right now, the Greenfield, if I'm looking at buying a car and it's the same function, and another car, if you tell me one car is $10,000, another car is $20,000, but it does exactly the same thing, the $10,000 car is a no-brainer for me. So I talked to my constituents, I talked to my town hall board, I had a session for an hour with the mayor and Corey, where they met my ear, and I wanted to talk to everybody. But my bottom line is I have to look out for my taxpayers. And if you're not doing that, you're not fulfilling the role of what they voted you in for. Thank you.
Supervisor Medine, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. The original document that we had, yes, showed government service, the downtown phase 1 showed the courts and government services combined in phase 1. And now we have the government services in 2048, which is phase 2. I'm really confused on that because I thought that the original project cost included courts and government services, which it says in the master plan, for the 175 million. So now you say that that's just the courts and jail. So I'm a little bit confused on that.
I would be happy to go and look at that. It's phase 1 for 175 million has been a reduced courthouse and a jail. The reduced scope of phase 1 has always been consistently that.
Do you have this book in front of you tonight?
I don't have that in front of me tonight.
Well, but I wonder if what you're talking about, Supervisor Medine, is that when we talk about jails and courts.
Page 32.
There are also the services that are related to the jails and courts. But then the government services, as I understand it, is everything else, is what the definition of government services? All the rest of us, the county clerk, treasurer.
No, so.
Okay.
So number 32, on the left side, so it says phase 1 downtown site comparison. On the left is the master plan that shows the jail, the fleet, the LEC, the parking garage, and the courts. On the right, which is labeled phase 1, shows the jail, the loading dock, and the courts.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
So, okay, thank you.
I was wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, glad we could clarify.
Yep.
Okay.
Supervisor Keller.
No, not if he has more to say. Go ahead.
No,
He's on the
I
next
was going to
topic.
move on to the next one.
Go ahead.
Well, mine is just a general comment. It can wait.
Use the mic, please. Go ahead.
Well, mine's just a general comment, and I wanted to first of all thank all the citizens for coming and speaking their mind. I'd like to make a point, and then I'll ask a question of everybody. The one point is, we had people here come and speak this evening, but
Back up a little bit, please, Pat.
they only represent a small percentage of the people that live in the city, let alone the county. The question I'll ask after I just make a point that I was once a visitor to this community and that I once moved to this community. And when I came here, I got to the downtown area and I found it incredibly confusing to drive around. I found it very congested and quite unattractive. I think I've made that point clear in the past. I would just ask everyone to close their eyes when they're at home and think about this for a little bit. What could this area look like if we proceed to the green site? And I keep imagining a vibrant, positive environment around here that sustains businesses much better than we are currently doing. I asked the county executive the other day how many employees will move if we go to the green side. And without hesitating, without pulling out his fingers to count, he said 94. 94 people. If you can read a pie chart, most of those people never eat lunch downtown. So I'm sorry to those people that think they really want it downtown. I can tell you, I don't care what this place looks like 30 years from now, if we have something other than this county business down here, everyone downtown will be better off. Thank you.
Supervisor Honnold.
When I came to Stevens Point, I saw a much different picture than you, Mr. Keller, okay? And I'd like to remind you that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The downtown Stevens Point area is not dead. It was dead when we had a mall that emptied out, but leaders got creative. We now have a viable mid-state technical institute downtown. We have a gorgeous library. We have a lot of small businesses. We have a vibrant art scene and musical scene that is being developed. We have a main street. There's no main street in Plover. There's no main street at Crossroads. We have a main street, and it's structurally very beautiful. It's very vibrant, and it is on its way up. It is not on its way down, in my experience. So I beg to differ with whether or not downtown is beautiful. Thank you.
Supervisor Weaver.
Pardon me, if I may, point of order. She did address me, so I'd like to rebut.
I'd like to remind everybody to address all comments to the chair, please. So.
Thank you. And thank you for your opinion. And I would just simply argue that you made my point. The change has made all this better, and the change I'm talking about would simply enhance that. Thank you.
Supervisor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you explaining that if people were looking at it as a $110 or $105 million difference, that's not an accurate representation. The question that I have now I think what I understand you to be saying is you should be looking at it more like $43 million when you factor in the time value of money, which I am an English major, which obviously means I need a little bit more hand-holding in these areas. But I understand from your comments that some of that $43 million difference is attributable to the county's debt tolerance. So I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about that.
Jenny?
Yeah, look good. Nope, I was looking around.
You almost got it.
So when we put some numbers to this concept, originally we take into account what the regulations or what the statutes say about debt service. So by statute, the county can issue debt for 5% of its equalized val. That's the limit. When we looked at project size and project costs, we tried to put in some parameters of what is a reasonable amount of debt for the county. Some would say, trying to answer the question of what's affordable. Now, everybody's affordable is different, but just so that we could put some numbers to paper, we looked at using a limit of 40% of our overall debt capacity, that we wouldn't exceed that number, so that we'd kind of range around that number and then drop in terms of having no more than 40% of our debt capacity is outstanding debt. So that doesn't take into account interest, it just takes into account principal payments. So when we looked at the phased approach, as we pay our debt over time and that overall debt burden kind of drops, that's when we can add those phases. Once it gets down far enough, you can add another phase. It'll go back up to the 40%. It'll start to drop, and then you can bring it back up. Over time, what we would assume and what we use in our calculations is a growing growth factor. So we looked at the history of our growth of equalized value over time, so that as we're growing as a community, those debt service payments can stay kind of constant or around the debt service targets that we are kind of trying to stay around. Now, 40% was kind of chosen. I looked at other communities in terms of whether they had large projects. Obviously, 40% is pretty high in terms of a tolerance. I did not feel comfortable going higher or recommending to this group any number higher than that. That is completely up to this body in terms of what you want to do. You know, I'm just trying to look at some numbers to give a starting point. We'll have those kind of conversations when we actually issue debt. But we needed a starting point because that's really your choice as a body in terms of where you want to go. You can go higher, you can go lower, but all of those things affect your rating. They affect, you know, how much folks are going to pay in taxes. And I think the one thing that I learned from our previous presentation is folks always try to ask me the simple question, which is, you know, tell me what it's going to do to my tax bill. I don't like to answer those questions because it's way bigger than that answer. And I think people want to simplify it because that's what they understand. They get a tax bill and they want to know, what does it do to my tax bill? But what came out of the last meeting is all I heard was, well, the two are $10 difference on the tax rate. So they're really not that different. Well, yeah, they are, because you have to take into account how long you're going to pay for that, over what period of time you're going to pay for it, what those interest rates are going to be, how long it's going to take you to build. We didn't talk about that as much because we just looked at, well, the difference in the tax rate today for the next upcoming budget is $10. So, you know, it doesn't change the overall cost of the project. It changes how much you will pay over time and when, in terms of how you lay out that debt structure. You know, think about it, you know, in your personal life. You go to buy a car. Well, can you afford the car? How much is the car? Well, the car is $30,000. Do you want to pay that over 5 years? Do you want to pay that over 3 years? Those monthly payments are different. What can you afford? You know, when we're talking about tax rate, you're talking more about the monthly payment, the annual payment. You're not talking about the overall price of the car. So I don't know that that answered your question.
No, I appreciate you sharing it. I think that what I maybe am looking at it a little differently than you are is you're suggesting that we should be having those conversations down the road. And it strikes me as if we are, as a board, are being asked to soon vote on a location. And a lot of what I'm hearing is focused on the economics. I think we need to be having these conversations now, because that 43 million, it could be higher and it could also be lower depending upon some of these assumptions that are being made.
Sure, and I will say that we've had touched on this a little bit at Finance Committee, knowing that this conversation is happening. And when I say later down the road, I guess what I'm kind of providing is, you know, the county kind of determines what that debt service schedule looks like to some degree. I mean, we don't get to determine the interest rate and some of those things, but we can decide, you know, do we want larger payments in the beginning? Do we want to gradually grow the debt? Like, how do we want to structure it? So we get to make those decisions. We get to decide kind of what our debt targets are. Those are county decisions, and I guess from my mind when I said that, I'm thinking those are things that happen when you go to issue the debt, not so much at this stage in the project.
So, Mr. Weaver, you bring up an interesting thought or a interesting comment. Do you think it would be more advantageous to have the question about the finance first than the location? So we would have a resolution to approve $175 million and the body would vote on that? Or to have the question about the green space or the downtown? I'm just curious.
Well, I think what I'm driving at is I'm not sure you can divorce those two things, because a lot of the rationales that are being offered about the various sites are being driven by economics. And 2 weeks ago, I'm hearing people that are saying, hey,
it'll cost us $110 million more. It's a no-brainer. So we should be building at the greenfield. Well, that's not accurate as articulated this evening. So I think that to be able to understand, is it a $43 million gap? Is it less? Is it more? Is hugely critical to this piece.
But again, to my question though, as I asked, is because the path that we're going down is we're going to decide the location, or, you know, or that will be the choice that's before us. And then once that's been determined, then we approve money. Are you suggesting that we should approve the money first?
No, I'm saying we should understand the costs of the debt first, because I don't think voting on the location in a vacuum is good sense. I think the economic component of it is completely tied to it.
So I think one thing in the phased approach, that when you look at the models that we designed with the phased approaches, the debt service target for one was slightly lower than the other in terms of just because of the dollar size of the project, but it also impacted the phasing, and then it impacted the timing of the phasing, and then it impacted the length of the debt service in terms of when the final kind of payments are made in the project over its life. I'm trying to think of a way to help understand. Maybe I'm answering your question, I don't know if I am, but help understand. The best example I can go back to is, you know, you're going out to buy the $30,000 car. Either way, the car's $30,000. So then your options are, do you want to finance it over 3 years and pay it off quicker with less interest payments? Can you not make that payment because it's not affordable? Is that not a burden you can put on your taxpayers because it's too high? So then you go to the 5-year payment cycle, and now that feels more affordable, but you're going to end up paying more because it's going to take you longer to pay it off, and you're going to pay more in interest. The bottom line in the two project models is one project costs more than the other. So your starting point is always going to be different, and one is always going to cost more than the other, regardless of how you do the financing. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
So your starting point is always going to be different.
Supervisor Pataki, then Supervisor Keller.
We built to a number with the jail we have right now, so building, if we say 175 million, and that's what we're gonna build to, it's probably not what we need.
Supervisor Keller.
Same problem we had with this building.
Can I make a comment to that?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not speeding this along, but I think Supervisor Pataki brings up an interesting point. When we sat down and we were looking at this project and we put everything together and we came back with the numbers, I mean, my heart broke because I want to build it all at once. I mean, that's the best thing for everybody. But I don't know, as your finance director, how I can ask you to do that and ask your citizens to support that kind of annual payment to pay it off, because I just didn't think there was any way that we could make that happen. So that's when we looked at the phased approaches. I'm like, how do we get this done so that everybody can get to the end and we can all feel good about what we did?
I don't think we're necessarily building to a number. When they built the other jail, they built to a number, but it was a reduced and a very small number. This was created from our needs, and we derived the number. So it's I would say it's apples and oranges.
Yeah, so we really tried to make sure that we put in everything we needed to accomplish. We just had to do it over a longer period of time.
Supervisor Keller.
Thank you. I think that last question leads right into my question is, are we reaching a point with either of these projects that you're uncomfortable reaching? So in other words, what's going to happen to our bond rating, et cetera?
Well, I'm your finance director, so you pay me to be cheap. No, I'm teasing. You know, we looked at a lot of numbers. The costs are what the costs are. There is no way we're going to do a project without this affecting our bond rating. It's just size and scope. The only thing that we can do is really sell the fact that we don't build jails and courthouses every 10 years. I mean, this is a project that's going to last my lifetime. it's not going to happen again. So that's our selling point. We're not the only ones that go through this. It's not like we're spending this repairing highways and doing other infrastructure. So that's our main selling point. I think folks know that. It's just going in and selling selling our story, being responsible about it financially, and do the best we can.
And I think part, too, and don't hold me to these numbers, they're general, but I think we have somewhere around a $400 million debt ceiling, and we never want to get close to that. No. But at the same time, we've been positioning ourselves for this for a long time, and I think right now, Jen, we have around $10 million in debt.
No.
I said don't hold me to those numbers.
Yeah, it's come down substantially because we've been kind of on a delay path. So I mean, our debt is almost completely paid, and we're going to issue debt again tonight if we get to that item. But in terms of the 40%, we looked at a lot of numbers. Going over 40% would cause a little concern. When I look at other counties that have done large scale projects, I don't see anybody's debt outstanding getting above those figures. Now, I'm not saying you can't. That's a board choice. But when I'm looking at other comparables and what rating agencies see and what they're used to, I think if we stay 40% and under, that kind of sells our story really well. Okay. But, the last time I built a courthouse and had a project this size was never. So, I'm just kind of looking at other people's history as well.
Thanks, Jen.
All right, well, if you guys want to.
Mr. Chair, can I just clarify, though? I did hear her say she's okay, generally, if things go as planned with the phased construction, the downtown site would be okay.
Either one.
I'm okay.
Either one.
I'm okay with either one.
Thank you. That's all I really needed here. Thanks.
So 33 is we had been asked to respond to some of the cons that were in the original presentation. So we'll let you guys can take a look at those as to how those could be handled. And then the last item, 37.1, hopefully we can get through this, but I know this is a hot topic. This is parking. And this is what downtown parking could look like versus what's recommended. So I'm going to turn over to our design team.
All right, good deal. So we don't need to do the clicking?
It doesn't click, so.
It doesn't work. He'll turn it
All right, good evening. Bruce Omtoid of Dewberry and Dwayne Jones of BWBR. We've been working on this topic. Actually, we've taken multiple looks at this, five or six different ways now, and with different members of our team also. So we wanted to try to boil this down into the some of the realities of what the parking scenario is that relate to downtown, give it a point of comparison to some extent to what standards would be if a greenfield site was developed, and look at that. But it kind of boils down into a handful of realities that I'll go over first, and then I'll hit on really the four recommendations. So the reality is, well, first of all, let me set the framework. So the framework is that parking shouldn't actually be a driver of this decision at all. And I think you'll agree with that by the time we get done with this tonight. All right. In the downtown setting, the city downtown is Zone B5. It's a central business district, and that allows for the use of on-street parking spaces as available to everyone. Therefore, there's actually a zero requirement. No spaces are required for off-street parking downtown. All right, so that's kind of that's kind of a good and a bad thing, right? So it's good, it's usually good that you don't have as many restrictions on you. It's also makes things much more subjective when it really comes down to it, and that it starts with this. So there's 391 spaces available within a couple blocks of this site. And yeah, do we have that ability to toggle back and forth a little bit? All right, and these are in the handouts, right? All right, so there's 391 on-street parking spaces available. Great, right? So the reality, though, is that this is short-term parking. On-street parking has limits of 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or 2 hours. So employees of a justice center really need daily parking. Okay, it's just not. They're not your necessarily your typical pool of employees, but they're definitely employees that don't always have the ability, much less you would want to encourage to go out on the street and move their car minimum of 3 times a day. So that's a reality, right? So you got all this parking that's available, and that's very subjective, and everybody would have a different opinion on whether the parking in their street is really available or not. So the next one is that in the phase 1 and master plan build out, as it's been presented, the site does have space for 200 cars of off-street surface parking. Okay, another 200 cars are going to be needed with a ramp or with additional on-street or with additional surface parking in surface lot parcels when the whole project is built out. Okay, there's been discussions about all the available acreage down here, and all those things have the potential of changing this scenario. It's been clarified tonight that our parking ramp has a value today. That whole topic that's been frankly blown out of proportion. It's a $26 million parking ramp today, and that's total project costs. That's not construction only. That's all the costs it takes to get a project done. All the scenarios that we're considering in the downtown environment utilize approximately 100 cars of on-street parking. Is that the right number? That's going to vary a lot, right? So, but the reality is it's available, it's convenient for a lot of short-term business, so we're accounting for that. The other reality is that the city does have a 15% parking reduction for an available transit stop, and that would be absolutely planned, whether it's downtown or on some other site. The last reality is that there are city standards that do require parking spaces as opposed to the downtown scenario because of the on-street parking. And so for a greenfield site, those city standards for parking counts total 297, so basically 300 stalls for phase 1, and 506 for the full build out of the master plan needs for the county. So I just wanted to point those things out. So that becomes a relevant guide for, it's a really good check to check against the standards when your criteria that you're looking at downtown is 0. Well, are we in the right ballpark here? Okay. So back to that sheet. If it's not, yep, it's up there. All right. So the phase 1 recommendations are to provide 200 off-street parking spaces. The site area allows for that to happen. There's a total need for 300, and so that's that variable of all this on-street parking that's available to everyone. So we're planning on some of that. Okay, in the master plan build out, again, double checked by the city's own standards for a greenfield, we're going to need 400 spaces on site of off-street parking, okay? Total need is 500, 506, pick a number, get out your crystal ball. But 100 of those can be on-street parking. And that's a logical place for us to be up here making a recommendation for all these things that are very much client-specific decisions that'll come along. So, so that brings us to one of those controversial points. Without a surface parking lot acquisition, this, if we can go back to that on-street parking map, there's an orange area that's shown. We've shown the map. We've shown the map that follows this. This is the area that we've been considering is our buildable area to redevelop for Justice Center components, right? And so that's what's shown in orange there. It's not 10.4 acres. It's not 14 acres. Could it be? Maybe. Those discussions are happening. But within this site, what we know is that we can meet this need, this recommended need that's been tested with the city's own standards for greenfields. We can meet it by building a ramp within those site constraints. Okay, so that's kind of where this has gone. Number 3 is that employees need off-street parking. Period. We would never recommend to any client that your only provision for your employees would be on-street parking. It's not sensible. Doesn't work. It's too disruptive to your daily routine, shift by shift. And then number 4 is that the Daily Justice Center public business also requires off-street parking to a pretty great extent. A lot of the legal proceedings often do take more than 2 hours. And so we've accounted for that in the overall parking analysis backup sheet that jury assembly parking spaces are needed, all of them. The city standards actually would allow the courtrooms themselves to be looked at with a discount, like worship spaces in a church, where there's an average 4 people per car that can show up, and so they don't require you to have 100 spaces; they require you to have 25. That kind of ratio. So that's what we've looked at. That's the recommendations. And then the other piece of this that's available is what the city sent to the county last month in a letter with possible transfer of ownerships. So that gets into that topic of are there city-owned property that could transfer to the county that could accommodate some of this extra 200 cars that's kicking in the parking ramp in the future. So those are all possibilities. It's not something that was inflated. It's not artificial. It's a real deal. So if you were going to work within that orange footprint of that master plan site area and need 400 spaces plus some on-street parking, that's how you'd have to get there. So
Anybody have any questions or comments? Supervisor Matt Chakowski.
With a project this size, what's our ADA requirement for handicap parking?
Dwayne, I'm going to throw that to you. So there is a ratio, and that is a good point, because the city clarified, oh, by the way, yeah, there is this thing where to
Use the
actually
mic,
meet the
please.
letter of,
For the people at home.
to actually meet the letter of the provisions for handicap access, you do have to have off-street parking to actually meet the legal requirement of what that has to be.
That was my next
So-
question, but if the
so
other one could be answered.
Yeah, how many is it going to be required? There's a percentage, and I will say I don't have that percentage right off the top of my head, but it's a small percentage.
Yeah, and we always put them near the entrance. But yeah,
Supervisor Don Jankowski.
doesn't affect the number though.
We have to take into consideration, we have 3 circuit courts. They hold jury trials. They may be on the same day, and when they bring people in, they may bring in 50 to 80 people as jurors. So you could have 300 to 400 cars out there. People come from all over the county. They don't have access to the bus routes. There is no place for those people to park.
Anybody else have any comments? Supervisor Weaver?
Just to clarify, you're at a point where you've made recommendations, and did you take in input from the city before you arrived at these recommendations?
Absolutely, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor. I want to say that we did have some really great conversations with the city about this, and they were very helpful for us to help us put this rationale together, I think. One of the tasks was us first, of course, to understand what would the zoning code require in a greenfield site. We then put that together along with our best judgment about what makes sense for a facility like this in either location. Pardon me for maybe forgetting the question in detail.
Yeah, I was just focused on the 4 recommendations that are geared at parking in downtown and wanted to understand if you took in input from the city before making those recommendations.
So specifically about the downtown site.
Correct.
Again, the city doesn't require parking, so they're gonna need to hear what the need is from the county or from any business owner if that isn't a requirement, but it still feels like a functional requirement.
There was a group of you that met with the city, though, to talk about the parking?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, we, just to clarify, thank you, Dwayne, that's all true. Yes, we've had multiple conference calls with the city, and we've met with them specifically, and we've reviewed both for a greenfield jail and courts that are very, very unique. They don't fit in any municipality's exact boxes of how many spaces you need, right? So we've talked through an acceptable count for those, and then so that gives us that reference point of that 297 and 506 stalls for phase 1 and ultimately, and then we've had multiple discussions about the downtown on-street parking, and we asked them specifically to show us, you tell us where there's 4 spaces and 6 spaces and why there's only 3 over there, and they did. So they provided a markup which led to the little colored diagram that might be on the screen.
We'll pull it back up.
And so this is straight out of the city's planner. Yep.
Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen. As I look at the map of that is now on the screen, and I believe it says 391 on-street parking spaces. Did anybody jump on their bike on a nice day and ride around to see how many of those parking spaces are already occupied by the businesses that are already in that area, let alone that, or homeowner, somebody visiting homeowner, to say there's 391 available parking spots on any given day, 412 of them might already be full.
Excellent point, and that's where the letter of what it means to be in a central business district and getting this allowance of 0 required parking.
But I've said it before.
Does it meet the reality check?
Ordinance doesn't create parking spaces.
So I will say that I'm not here every day, but I'm here probably more than a lot of you supervisors. And when I come down here and park, a lot of times the employee parking lot across from the county city building is full. I managed to find a spot over there with those spaces with the rest of the staff. But I know that city leadership has mentioned it in 2 different cases and talked about how, and I think the mayor had brought it up on the first committee of the whole, and I had addressed it. And then Ryan Karnowski, I think at our last county board, was sitting in the back and had made the comment that he's never had problems finding a place to park. And the people at home reminded me, they heard me chuckle. And the reason I chuckled and I didn't get a chance to respond is that the city's leadership has a tag that they hang on the mirror that allows them to park there. And the mayor parks outside of his door. He drives a black pickup truck and he parks it outside of his door and walks in. I look at that similar to when do as I say, not as I do. I don't see the mayor or Mr. Karnowski parking 2 or 3 blocks away and walking here, or anybody that has to utilize this facility day in and day out. And I would agree with you. By laxing the rules does not create or make parking spaces or create them. They still don't exist. And I am working to try and get some of these no parking around our building that is open to the public removed. And I hope to make sure that I get that done in the next few months.
Thank you for stealing my thunder, Mr. Chair.
That's what I do.
Potentially, as a closing point, would be just to say that the decision for a parking ramp or not has a lot of, the greening of urban spaces. There's an argument there that would say, let's not pave any more lots, down here, and a ramp is a good thing. There's others that would say the opposite. That's crazy. We're wasting money. Don't ever do that. So very subjective, should not be the reason for any decision, is what your design team's going to tell you. Is it money? Yes, it's real money. Are there options down the road? The city has shown that there may be some property swapping, property options here that may take that ramp level of need for the immediate area and diminish it. So,
Thank you. Mike, did you have anything to close with? Nope.
That was it.
Okay, we're all,
thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Review and approval, number
Mr.
8,
Chair.
approve. Supervisor Machakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I hate to prolong this any longer than it needs to be, but it is an important issue, and there were some things mentioned earlier that were mentioned at the beginning during public comment. Number one, I go back to my college stats professor who told me the saying that figures don't lie, but liars figure. And I heard a cost of Woods County's 200-bed jail versus our cost of facility. They're building a jail. They're not building courtrooms. So again, figures don't lie, liars figure. And I see Tegra's going to address that later on. The other one that I keep hearing, and I've heard multiple people say, they keep talking about parolees. Probation and parole is out on Highway 10 behind Target, right by the DMV. I see the sign every time I go to the DMV. So I just wanted to clear those up because they were put in people's minds earlier this evening.
Supervisor Medine.
Since that was addressed to my comments, I did talk to probation and parole very thoroughly, and they said that it's very frequent, if not the majority of time, they actually make more appearances in this courtroom than they do at the offices. And most of those are taken care of through telephone calls now, just because of the staffing arrangement that they have, like 80 people per staff. So they're not moving people in and out of offices. They're checking on them electronically.
Thank you. All right. Approval of minutes, February 21st, 2023. Motion by Supervisor Dubek, seconded by Supervisor Keller. Corrections, changes? All those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. If there is no objections, I will take both of these executive appointments confirmations. Seeing no objections, the appointment is for David Hickether and Sarah Rakowski to the Traffic Safety Commission for the remainder of a 4-year term expiring April 20 of 2026. A motion by Supervisor Pataki, seconded by Supervisor Jankowski. Discussion. Supervisor Rakowski.
Mr. Chair, I will be abstaining as Sarah is family.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motions 9 and 10 carry. Number 11, approving a one-year extension of the Animal Control Services Agreement between Portage County and the Humane Society of Portage County, Inc.
Resolution number 87, 2022, 2024, submitted by the Public Safety Emergency Management Committee.
Motion by Supervisor Jankowski, seconded by Supervisor Medine. Discussion. Okay. You want to just do voice on these? Are you okay? In the reason of time for tonight, if everyone's fine, we'll just take a voice vote on these to move along quickly. We're understaffed, as you can see, with spring break as well. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
My spring break too.
Number 12, authorizing republication and renumbering of the Portage County Code of Ordinance and adopting a manner of order, classification and arrangement of the Portage County Code of Ordinance.
Resolution number 88, 2022, 2024, submitted by the Executive Operations Committee.
Motion by Supervisor Rekowski, seconded by Supervisor Sislevich. Discussion. This is all just part of trying to make things a lot more uniform, and we are following state code. So this is a definite improvement. So there's no further discussion. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 13, amending Portage County Code of Ordinance, Section 3.1.19, Land Records Modernization Committee, resulting in a reduction of committee members.
Resolution number 89, 2022, 2024, submitted by the Executive Operations Committee.
Motion by Supervisor Barry Jakowski, seconded by Supervisor Morrow. Discussion. Supervisor Weaver.
Were the reduced, I guess,
Members?
thank you, members, were they consulted at all in this? Did they give any input?
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
Yes, I was one of the members that was asked that the reduction, if the reduction made sense, and it certainly does. And one of the reasons I moved on the motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I did not get a chance to talk to Supervisor Morrow, but I know that I had to twist her arm, I think, to get her to do it. So,
I think we've got
and then the rest of them?
Well, even the resolution itself was prompted by reaching out to one member for reappointment, and they suggested to reevaluate the membership.
And then Register of Deeds, we had consulted with them as well.
And GIS.
GIS. So, yes.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures on highway projects for proceeds of borrowing.
Resolution number 90, 2022, 2024, submitted by the Finance Committee.
Motion by Supervisor Soik, seconded by Supervisor Rakowski. Discussion. There's no further discussion. Oh. No further discussion. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 15, authorizing an addition of 2.0 full-time equivalents, FTE, positions for a new mental health clinic and a new social worker position for the Health and Human Services Department to be funded with grant funds.
Resolution number 91, 2022, 2024, submitted by the Health and Human Services Board and Human Resources Committee.
Motion by Supervisor Dubek, seconded by Supervisor Matt Chakowski. Discussion. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 16, resolution concerning Wisconsin wolf population goal to the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Wolf Management Team.
Resolution number 92, 2022, 2024, submitted by the Land and Water Conservation Committee.
Motion by Supervisor Barry Jakowski, seconded by Supervisor Splinter. Discussion. Supervisor Honnold.
Yes, I'm just curious. I assume all the rest of the supervisors got a mailing or an email from a wildlife biologist really questioning this whole process and why this is coming before county boards. When the decision to send information out that accompanies a resolution, as this one does, who determines what's attached?
Oh, boy.
Because it's clearly, this attachment is clearly in support of the resolution, but there's also,
So most of the stuff that's brought forward through, belongs to the committee.
Right.
So the committees bring the things forward to the board, and it is still, I wish Maria was here, but that still belongs to that board until we approve it when it gets here. So technically, I'm not supposed to change or alter anything else that comes forward because it is the ownership of the committee that sent it forward.
so is it up to the committee chair or the committee then to decide what we say?
A lot of times what you see comes through staff even. So I'm trying to think of different instances, but the staff usually will have a lot of the supporting documents. And the supervisor or the committee chair would review an agenda item, depending on what it is, if there's a presentation and they have it. But when I approve the county board material and stuff, because it's coming mostly through the committees and it really doesn't belong to me, I put it on the agenda. But if somebody's having a presentation, I like to see the presentation before. That's how I run my committee. I like to see the information that we're including in it so I can read it. But the other committees and how things channel through them, most of those people are approving an agenda. So they may just see one piece of paper and it may just list the items on it. They may not know. And I know we've had some conversations and discussions about what's included, but that is more of a staff function, some of that stuff that's included, or supporting documents. And we've always tried to continually work on trying to make sure that there's more and more information or something that pertains to it is included with the packet and the information, because that's part of the decision. We had a lady tonight that wanted to include some information that someone was supposed to get in the packet and it didn't. And because of our resolution and ordinance, and we're voting on it now, I wasn't able to let her hand it out on this particular item. So
Maria is on if you want her to speak.
Maria, do you have anything to add to that?
All I was going to say is that everything that's included in the packet was what was submitted to me by the committee.
Jen, did you want to say? No.
It's usually me who does it, and then.
So you want to just speak to the, you're one of the only staff ones here that, so.
Usually how I arrange what I put in a packet, it's developed by me with a resolution that goes to the committee. If I question something in it, I will ask the committee, do you want me to include this or not? But typically it's what I put in the packet for the committee.
And or depending on who's bringing the resolution forward, or if they have supporting documents that accompany it, go through it. But if there are other things that someone else wants to bring to the committee, they could bring to the committee and ask for them to be included in the packet. Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been my experience, and in this instance, that everything that, as I served as committee members and committee chairs and committee vice chairs, that everything that is submitted to the committee for them to make their determination is submitted to this full board so that they have the same information that the committee used to make their determination.
Is there any other discussion? Supervisor Weaver, then Supervisor Shabilsky.
Thank you. I
did not vote in favor of this resolution at the committee level and will not be voting in favor of it this evening. I think that we've gotten a incomplete picture of what's happening here, and I'd like to point a few things out to maybe help some folks that are looking to be informed. My understanding is that a resolution that was practically identical to this was brought before this board last term and it failed. So it's back again. I think that this concept of the numeric element of 350, I think there's a little bit of background that people ought to know about. First of all, as I understand it, when it was put into effect, the Department of Natural Resources did it in order to actually increase the population of wolves because they were concerned about extinction. And we are now hearing that people are essentially trying to turn that concept on its head and make it a limitation. Also, I think what's critical is that DNR is who regulates this issue. And the DNR came out with a new proposed plan in November, and they actually intend to move away from a numeric indicator as how they want to regulate the wolf population. So by voting in favor of this, we are actually going contrary to what the Department of Natural Resources wishes to do. I think that it is totally appropriate for individuals and special interest groups to have comments, which they've made, and they have submitted their comments pursuant to the public comment period that the DNR had, so they will be heard. I personally just do not think that we as a county need to be making a pronouncement on this issue. Thank you.
Supervisor Shabilsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sort of had the same reaction when I saw this in the packet, and I wasn't able to watch the committee meeting, so I did a little reading for myself just to try to inform on this issue. And, you know, I'm certainly not an expert, and I would leave it up to the DNR, but knowing this is an advisory resolution, and that's fine. But just looking at Minnesota's numbers, they just in 2022 established a target of 2,200 to 3,000. And their current population is 2,700, and that's 8.5 times the number that we're looking at here. And knowing that our number was sort of established at the start of the process, when we really didn't know how things were going to go back to that seems a little odd to me. When you're talking about Minnesota having a goal number that's 8.5 times, they're maybe a little bigger, maybe a little more habitat. Certainly not 8.5 times more. So just looking at Michigan, I couldn't find an exact goal for them, but they have a sustainability target in the UP of 600 to 1,300 and a current population of somewhere around 695, and that's just the UP. So looking at these numbers and what's actually going on, decades later, I don't think there's any reason for us, even in an advisory capacity, to be telling the DNR their jobs.
Anybody else? Supervisor Bob Gifford, then.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, could I respectfully request we do this one by roll call?
Yes, I'm already there. I got it in my hand. Supervisor Peterson.
Most of the comments, for hire are people that are living in the city. I've got a trail cam picture from my daughter's house. It's their front yard. They got a wolf on it, and they lived 4 miles east of Rushalt. Would you, after a wolf walked through your yard at 11:30 at night, would you let your kids stand and wait for the bus, or put your pet out for the day after you had this here picture? So we're not out to eliminate them, but I think that a person should have a little control over them, at least put, a little fear of humans on them instead of having them walk through your front yard.
Anybody else? Supervisor Shabilsky.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm a hunter. I hunt in Oneida County, just south of the Willow Reservoir, and the wolf population up there, I will say, it has exploded. In 2 instances in the past decade, once I had a pack of wolves actually walk around me in my stand, to the point, I mean, I didn't see them, but they were communicating with each other by sound. So I knew they were there. Actually, 2 years ago, I got out to my trail, to my stand. As soon as the light came up, I saw wolf tracks. And I'm talking, I wear a size 13 wide. I went down out of my stand. It was wider than my boot, these wolf tracks. So there's a good size alpha there. I'm not saying that this isn't a situation. My father-in-law has wolves through his yard. He wouldn't be happy with me voting against this, but, you know, I think the 350 number is just antiquated and has no basis in anything other than people want to use it as a limit.
So I don't hunt. I actually live trap and relocate chipmunks. I have no problem eating venison or deer, and I understand the concept, but I don't participate in it at all. So
I would add too, I haven't gotten a deer in 8 years, but that might be more my own skill than.
I don't feel like I have anything to add to the conversation the two of you are having right now.
If there's no further comment, it's getting late, folks, and we will use the clicker because I sense it's not going to be unanimous. So all in favor, vote yes, and opposed, vote no.
Are we ready?
We're all set. Supervisor Laddick?
Yes. Yes.
And Supervisor Olson, you said yes as well?
No, nay.
Okay. Nay for Olson, yes for Laddick.
Vote reveals 15 ayes, 9 nays. Motion carries.
Motion carries. I will take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Supervisor Barry Jakowski, seconded by Supervisor Splinter. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.